Hey friends! Glad you're here at God of Fiction. We've cooked up something special. What if Harry and Hermione discovered an ancient soul bond at age 8 that made them unstoppable? Liking and subscribing really helps us out. Okay, story time. Chapter 1. The space between the cupboard smelled like dust and old shoes and the iron-tinged rust of the water heater that clicked and groaned behind the thin wall. Harry Potter lay curled on his side, knees drawn to his chest, breathing through his mouth because his nose had swollen shut an hour ago. Maybe 2 hours. Hard to tell time in the dark. Dudley's birthday. That's what had started it. Harry had been cooking breakfast, standing on the step stool Aunt Petunia kept for reaching the high cabinets, the one she let him use at the stove because she couldn't be bothered to do it herself, and he'd burned the bacon. Not badly. Just a little dark at the edges. But Dudley had wanted perfect bacon for his birthday breakfast, and Uncle Vernon's hand had found the back of Harry's head before the boy could even stammer an apology. The hit itself wasn't the worst part. Harry had learned to go limp when Vernon grabbed him, learned to curl small and protect his stomach and his face. The worst part was the sound Aunt Petunia made. That little click of her tongue against her teeth. Annoyance. Not at Vernon. At Harry. For making a scene. For existing loudly enough to be noticed. They'd shoved him in the cupboard before 8 in the morning, and from the silence in the house, they'd all gone out. Dudley's birthday outing. The zoo, probably, or the cinema and then dinner somewhere Harry would never see the inside of. He pressed his forehead against the cool wall and concentrated on breathing. Something was building in his chest. It happened sometimes, this pressure, like a balloon inflating behind his ribs. It usually came when he was scared or hurt or angry, and things happened when it got too big. The glass at the zoo that time. Aunt Petunia's vase shattering across the room when no one was near it. His hair growing back overnight after she'd shaved it to stubble. Tonight it felt different. Bigger. Less like a balloon and more like a wave, something that wanted out, that was pressing against the boundaries of his skin like it couldn't stand to be contained in something so small and hurt and alone. Harry squeezed his eyes shut. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want, the wave crested. But instead of smashing outward, instead of breaking something in the house, it went somewhere. Like a rope thrown into darkness, it unspooled from the center of his chest and flew, and connected. Hermione Granger was sitting on her bedroom floor with her back against her bed, methodically tearing a piece of notebook paper into strips. Tear. Fold. Tear. Fold. The rhythm was soothing. Mechanical. It kept her hands busy so she didn't have to think about what Emma Davies had said at school today, or the way the other girls had laughed, or how Mrs. Patterson had looked at Hermione with that particular expression adults got when they were thinking, well, if you weren't so odd, dear, they wouldn't pick on you. She wasn't crying. She'd decided an hour ago that she was done crying about Emma Davies and her stupid friends and their stupid, her hands stilled. Something was happening. Something was here, in the room with her, except it wasn't in the room. It was, inside. Like a door she'd never noticed had suddenly blown open in the back of her mind, and through it rushed warmth and pain and loneliness so profound it made her own seem small. Hermione gasped. The torn paper scattered. Who's there? She thought it, didn't say it, but the response was immediate, a jolt of shock, of fear, and underneath both, a desperate, aching hope. You can hear me? The voice wasn't in her ears. It was behind her eyes, inside her thoughts, woven into the fabric of her awareness so completely that for a moment she thought she'd gone mad. People on television who heard voices were always mad, weren't they? This was what happened when you read too many books and had no friends, you invented one. But the pain was real. Not hers, sharper than hers, more physical. She could feel it like an echo, a throbbing in the face she didn't have a reason for, a dull ache across the shoulders, a bone-deep cold that didn't match her heated bedroom. You're hurt, she thought, and concern overrode the fear so quickly she'd analyze it later and be surprised at herself. Another jolt. Surprise this time, and something fragile underneath it. I'm fine. Who are you? What's happening? I don't know. Hermione pressed her palms flat against the carpet, grounding herself. I'm Hermione. I'm 8. I live in Crawley. Who are you? A pause. She felt him thinking, and it was a him, she was suddenly certain, could feel the shape of his mind like reading the outline of a story, trying to decide if this was safe. If she was safe. The calculation broke her heart a little, because 8-year-olds shouldn't have to calculate whether it was safe to tell someone their name. Harry. I'm Harry. I'm in Little Whinging. That's in Surrey, she thought automatically, because geography was one of approximately 9,000 things she'd memorized for fun. I'm in Surrey too. You're maybe 20 miles from me. How is this happening? I don't know, she thought again, and she hated not knowing, but right now it seemed less important than the pain pulsing through their connection. Harry, you're really hurt. What happened? The connection wavered. She felt him flinch, not physically, but mentally, trying to pull back, to wall off the parts of himself that were bleeding through. Shame. Hot, corrosive shame, like he'd done something wrong by being hurt. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I reached out and you were there. I didn't mean to, I'm sorry if I don't. The force of her own thought surprised her. Don't apologize. I felt you and I'm glad. Now it was her turn to hesitate, to feel the vulnerability of honesty. I was really lonely tonight. And now I'm not. The shame receded. In its place, that tentative hope bloomed again, and warmth spread through the connection like sunlight finding its way through clouds. Me neither, he thought. Not anymore. They talked until Hermione's parents called her down for dinner. Not in words the entire time, sometimes it was just feeling, a shared awareness like sitting next to someone you trusted in comfortable silence. She learned things about him in fragments, the cupboard, which made her so angry her desk lamp flickered and buzzed, the aunt and uncle, the cousin. He learned about her, the books, the loneliness, the way she'd sometimes make things happen, float things, or fix broken objects just by wanting them whole. You do it too. His excitement pulsed bright and sharp. The weird stuff. You make things happen. She sat up straighter. I thought I was the only one. I thought there was something wrong with me. There's something wrong with both of us, then. A pause. Or maybe there's something right with us. When she went downstairs, Hermione was smiling, and her mother noticed immediately. Good evening, sweetheart. You look cheerful, good book. Something like that, Hermione said, and felt Harry's amusement ripple warmly through the back of her mind. They spent the next 3 days in near constant mental contact. Harry had to be careful, the Dursleys were vigilant about anything abnormal, and twice he almost spoke aloud when he meant to think at Hermione, but by the 3rd day, the connection had stabilized into something effortless. Like breathing. He didn't have to reach for her, she was simply there, a warm presence at the edge of his awareness, ready to sharpen into full conversation the moment either of them wanted it. On the 4th day, Hermione couldn't stand it anymore. I want to meet you. Properly. Harry was in the back garden, weeding Aunt Petunia's flower beds. His hands stilled in the dirt. What if this goes away? If we meet and it breaks? Why would it break? Good things don't usually last. For me. The matter-of-fact way he thought it, like stating a law of physics, made Hermione's chest ache. Harry. I'm not going anywhere. But I understand if you're not ready. A long pause. She felt him wrestling with it, the hope warring with a lifetime of learned caution. Then, there's a library. In Little Whinging. The public one on Elm Street. I can get there on Saturday, They won't care where I am as long as I'm not in the house. I'll ask my parents to take me. They'll say yes if I tell them I want to look at their local history section. A flicker of guilt at the manipulation, but it faded fast. She had priorities now. How will you know me? He asked. Hermione smiled into the afternoon sun streaming through her bedroom window. Harry. I'll know you. Saturday came gray and drizzling, the kind of English summer day that couldn't decide whether to commit to rain. The library was a squat brown building with a bike rack out front and a community bulletin board papered with flyers for dog walking services and parish council meetings. Hermione's father dropped her off with a kiss on the forehead and a promise to return in 2 hours. Stay inside, love. I'll pop into the hardware store and come back for you. Thanks, Dad. She was out of the car before he'd fully stopped, her trainer splashing in a puddle as she hurried toward the entrance. The library was quiet inside. A few pensioners reading newspapers. A mother with a toddler in the children's section. And at a table near the back, half hidden behind a shelf of encyclopedias, a small boy with black hair and round glasses, sitting very still with a book open in front of him that he clearly wasn't reading. Hermione stopped. The connection, their connection, flared so strongly she nearly stumbled. It was like the difference between hearing a radio and standing in front of a live orchestra. Everything sharpened. The warm pulse of his presence went from background hum to full surround sound, and she felt his head snap up before she saw it, felt his eyes find her before she registered the green of them. He was smaller than she'd expected. Thin in a way that spoke to more than genetics, his clothes hung off him, clearly secondhand, clearly meant for someone much bigger. The glasses were taped at one corner. There was a fading yellow bruise along his jaw. She crossed the library with purpose and sat down across from him. Up close, his eyes were extraordinary, vivid green, wide, fixed on her face with an intensity that might have been unnerving from anyone else. But she could feel what was behind those eyes. Wonder. Relief so acute it was almost pain. Hi, she said softly. Hi. His voice was quiet, a little rough, like he wasn't used to using it much. You're real. Exceedingly real. She reached across the table, slowly, giving him time to pull back. He didn't. Her fingers closed around his, and the world shifted. Later, neither of them could adequately describe what happened in that moment. The connection between them, which had felt like a thread, then a rope, then a river, became something architectural. Structural. Like a bridge snapping into place between two cliffsides, or a key turning in a lock that had been waiting centuries for exactly this configuration. Light didn't flash. Thunder didn't crack. Nothing visible happened at all. But inside, in the space they shared, something vast and ancient opened its eyes and recognized them. Harry's breath caught. Hermione's grip on his hand tightened. What was that? They thought simultaneously, and then both laughed, a small, breathless sound in the quiet library. I don't know, Hermione whispered. But I think this was always supposed to happen. I think we were always supposed to find each other. Harry stared at her. Then, slowly, he smiled. It transformed his face, not just happiness but safety, the look of someone who'd been drowning and finally found shore. Okay, he said. Okay. So what do we do now? Hermione smiled back, and there was something fierce in it. Now we figure out what we are. They spent the rest of that library visit testing. Carefully, because they were in public and because they were 8 and cautious, but testing nonetheless. Hermione pulled a book off the shelf, Local Flora of Surrey, and set it on the table between them. Make it float, she whispered. Harry glanced around. The nearest person was 3 rows away, absorbed in a newspaper. He looked at the book, concentrated, it rose. Smoothly, steadily, 6 inches off the table and hovering like it had forgotten gravity existed. I can always do that, he murmured. Since I was little. But watch, he let go of the effort, and the book wobbled, but didn't fall. Because Hermione had caught it. Not with her hands. With whatever they shared. She felt the weight of it in her mind like a physical object, felt Harry's power still threaded through it, and her own rising to meet his, weaving together until the book sat in a cradle of shared intention, steady as stone. "Oh," Hermione breathed. "Harry, feel that. Feel what we're doing. It's like," he groped for words. "Like I'm only doing half the work. Less than half. Like you're carrying it too, and together it's easy," she finished. "It's easy." They set the book down and stared at each other. Hermione's mind was racing, she could feel Harry's racing too, both of them spinning through implications and possibilities so fast their shared thoughts became a blur. "We need to practice," Hermione said firmly. "Somewhere private. Somewhere no one will see." "There's a patch of woods behind Wisteria Walk," Harry offered. "No one goes there. It's all overgrown. Saturday mornings. I'll tell my parents I'm going to a study group." She paused. "That's not even really a lie. We are studying." Harry's mouth quirked. "Studying what?" "Us." The woods behind Wisteria Walk became their laboratory. Every Saturday, and sometimes after school when Hermione could get her parents to drive her to Little Whinging under the pretext of library visits, they met among the silver birches and tangled undergrowth and explored what they could do. Alone, they were unusual. Harry could move small objects, generate warmth, occasionally make himself unnoticeable in ways he couldn't quite explain. Hermione could fix broken things, accelerate plant growth, and once, memorably, turned a rock bright blue when she was frustrated with a maths problem. Together, they were something else entirely. The first time they tried to lift something heavy, a fallen log, half-rotted but still massive, they reached for each other instinctively. Their powers didn't just add together, they multiplied. The log ripped free of the earth with such force it crashed into the canopy 30 feet above them, showering them with leaves and startled birds. They stared upward, mouths open. "That was supposed to just hover," Harry said faintly. "We need to calibrate," Hermione said, already analyzing. "We're putting too much force in. It's like, we're used to compensating for working alone, so together we're doubling what we actually need." They learned. Over weeks and months, they learned. Not from any teacher or book, there were no books about what they were, they'd checked, Hermione had torn through every library within bus distance, but from trial and error, from the feedback of their connection, from the way their shared power seemed to want to be used, seemed almost eager to show them what it could do. By their 9th birthday, Harry's in July, Hermione's in September, they could move objects of any size with precision and grace. Shield themselves, a discovery born from Dudley's gang cornering Harry one afternoon, his panic flaring through the bond, Hermione lending her strength from 20 miles away, and an invisible wall of force sending 5 boys sprawling. Make themselves genuinely unnoticeable, not invisible, but beneath attention, sliding through awareness like water through a sieve. Communicate over any distance without effort or delay. Share senses, Harry could see through Hermione's eyes if she let him, hear what she heard, and vice versa. And one thing they discovered by accident, during a rainstorm that caught them unawares in their woods, they could stop the rain. Not metaphorically. Not in a small patch. Harry had thrown his hands up instinctively, wanting to keep the water off them, and Hermione had surged to support him without thinking, and the rain just stopped. Hung in the air in a million suspended droplets, glistening like a frozen chandelier above their heads. They stood beneath it, dry and wide-eyed, and the implications settled on them like the rain couldn't. "We're not normal," Harry said. It wasn't a question. "No," Hermione agreed. "We're really, really not." The situation with the Dursleys resolved itself naturally, which is to say Hermione and Harry resolved it. It happened in October of their 9th year. Vernon grabbed Harry's arm, hard, bruising hard, because the boy had been staring out the window instead of scrubbing the kitchen floor. Harry didn't flinch. He didn't cower. He looked up at his uncle with those green eyes, and the entire house vibrated. "Let go," Harry said quietly. Vernon's fingers sprang open as if the arm had turned to hot iron. He staggered back, face purpling, mouth working around threats that wouldn't come. Because the house was still vibrating, the dishes rattling in the cabinets, the windows buzzing in their frames, the very foundations humming with something vast and patient and entirely, unmistakably dangerous. 20 miles away, Hermione sat at her desk with her eyes closed and her jaw set, pouring strength and steadiness through the bond like water through a fire hose. "You don't touch me again," Harry said. His voice was conversational. Even polite. "You don't put me in the cupboard. You give me Dudley's second bedroom. You feed me properly. And we don't have a problem." Vernon's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "Now you listen here, boy," the kitchen window cracked. A single line, top to bottom, perfectly straight. Vernon went white. "The bedroom," Harry repeated. "Proper meals. And you leave me alone." He moved into Dudley's second bedroom that night. The Dursleys gave him a wide berth after that, which suited Harry perfectly. He didn't want their love, had stopped wanting it years ago, somewhere around the time a bushy-haired girl's voice had appeared in the dark of his cupboard and shown him what actual caring felt like. "You okay?" Hermione's thought came soft and warm that evening, as Harry lay on a real bed for the first time in his life, staring at a ceiling that was more than 18 inches from his face. "Yeah." He stretched out, marveling at the space. "I think I am." "Good. You should have done that ages ago." "I wasn't ready ages ago. I needed," he stopped, but she felt the rest of it. He'd needed her. Needed to not be alone before he could be brave. "You were always brave," she thought firmly. Surviving that house alone for 8 years was brave. He didn't argue. Just let the warmth of her conviction wash through him, and slept better than he had in his entire life. They were 10 when they discovered the books. Hermione had dragged Harry to a car boot sale in Guildford. Her parents thought she was looking for second-hand novels, which wasn't entirely untrue, and Harry had felt it. A pull. Something humming at the same frequency as their bond, tucked between a box of broken clocks and a crate of vinyl records. "Hermione." He tugged her sleeve. "Here." She felt it the moment she focused, a resonance, like striking a tuning fork and hearing an answering tone. They dug through the crate together and found them, 3 books, leather-bound, old enough that the spines cracked when they opened them. The text inside was handwritten in ink that shimmered faintly, and the language was, "It's English," Hermione said slowly, frowning at the page. "But old. Really old. Middle English?" "No, it's shifting." "Harry, look, it's changing." He looked. She was right. The words were rearranging themselves as he watched, settling into modern English like a translation happening in real time. The book was adapting to its reader. Bonds of the Soul, a treatise on the sacred connections between magical kind. They bought the 3 books for £2 and spent the rest of the afternoon in Hermione's room, reading in tandem. She'd take one book, he'd take another, and they'd share what they were learning through the bond faster than either could read aloud. What they learned, soul bonds were real. Had been real, once, thousands of years ago, common enough that someone had written academic treatises about them. They were not romantic by nature, or not exclusively. The bond predated and superseded human categories. It was a connection at the level of magical essence, 2 cores that resonated so perfectly they became more together than the sum of their parts. The books described levels of bonding. Surface connections, empathic links, shared emotions. Middle bonds, telepathy, shared power, enhanced ability. Deep bonds, and here the language grew almost reverent, unity of essence, a shared magical core that draws upon the fundamental forces of creation itself. "Harry," Hermione said aloud, looking up from her book with wide eyes. "According to this, we're the things we can do, deep bond, he finished. He was sitting cross-legged on her bed, his own book open in his lap. Yeah. I just read the same section in this one. It says deep bonds haven't been documented in over 1,000 years. It says they were feared, Hermione continued, scanning the page. Not by the bonded pairs, but by, it calls them the unjoined. Regular people. Because a deep bonded pair was essentially. She trailed off. Unstoppable, Harry said quietly. They looked at each other. We need to keep practicing, Hermione said. Harry nodded. And we need to not tell anyone about this. Not yet. Agreed. Not until we understand it fully. She paused, then added with a small smile, though I suspect we're going to have a hard time hiding it forever. We won't hide it forever. Just until we're ready to not hide it. And when will that be? Harry grinned. It was a different grin than the shy, cautious smile she'd seen in that library 2 years ago. This one had edges. When we're strong enough that it doesn't matter who knows. They were not idle in the months that followed. The books became their curriculum. Hermione devoured the theory, Harry, with his more intuitive approach to their power, translated theory into practice. They worked in a feedback loop. She'd read a passage about magical shielding and feed him the concept, he'd try it, she'd feel what he was doing through the bond and refine the technique, they'd both attempt it together and watch the results scale exponentially. By their 10th birthday, their list of capabilities had grown dramatically. Elemental manipulation, not just stopping rain, but calling wind, heating air, pulling moisture from the atmosphere. Precise telekinesis at a molecular level, Hermione used it to repair a shattered vase so perfectly that no seam showed, and Harry used it to unpick the lock on his bedroom door without touching it. Emotional influence, a dangerous one they agreed to use sparingly, but useful for making the Dursleys forget to be terrible. And something the books called translocation, short-range teleportation, limited to line of sight, but improving with practice. They also learned about the magical world. The third book, the one Harry had initially set aside because it seemed the most damaged, turned out to be a history. A history of wizards. Of wands and schools and a secret society running parallel to the one they lived in. It was fragmentary, missing pages, clearly ancient, but it confirmed what they'd always suspected, they weren't freaks or broken or wrong. They were magical. And there were others like them, though, if the book about soul bonds was accurate, no one quite like them. There's a school, Hermione said one evening in their woods, breath misting in the November cold. For magical children. In Scotland. Hogwarts, Harry said. He'd felt her reading about it through the bond earlier that day. You think we'll get invited? I think we're exactly the right age. 11, the book says. That's next year for both of us. Harry leaned back against their favorite birch tree, considering. Through the bond, Hermione felt him weighing it, the appeal of answers, of training, of community, against the risk of scrutiny, of control, of someone trying to separate them. We go, he decided. But on our terms. No one tells us what we are or what we can do. We already know. Agreed. Hermione sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder, their combined warmth keeping the cold at bay without either of them consciously willing it. And if they try to limit us, they won't succeed, Harry finished. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Through the bond, certainty flowed between them, shared, reinforced, unshakable. The wizarding world didn't know they were coming. When it found out, it would not be ready. The letters arrived on a Tuesday in July, 2 weeks before Harry's 11th birthday. His came first, delivered by Owl, of all things, the bird tapping imperiously at his bedroom window at 7 in the morning while the Dursleys slept. Harry took the heavy parchment envelope and felt the magic woven into it, felt it the way he felt everything now, with a clarity that came from 3 years of honing his senses. The letter was addressed in emerald ink, Mr. H., Potter the second bedroom 4, Privet Drive Little Whinging Surrey. He opened it with a flick of intent, the wax seal popping off without him touching it, and read, "Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." "It's here," he sent to Hermione, letting her read through his eyes. "Mine too." Excitement blazed through the bond, sharp and bright. An owl just came to the kitchen window. Dad nearly fainted. Mum's trying to feed it toast. Harry laughed aloud. "Are they okay?" "Confused. But okay. I haven't told them everything, but they know I can do things. They've seen me fix broken plates and float books. They just didn't know there was a whole world attached to it." A pause, then her voice came through with a conspiratorial edge. "There's a professor coming. To explain. A Professor McGonagall. Tomorrow." Harry looked at his own letter again. No mention of a professor visiting him. Just a supply list and instructions to send his acceptance by owl. Which made sense. The Dursleys wouldn't exactly roll out the welcome wagon for a representative of the magical world. "I'll handle it," he told Hermione. "You learn everything you can from this McGonagall. I want to know what she says, how she acts, what she gives away about the school." Obviously. A warm pulse of shared purpose. "This is it, Harry. This is the beginning." "No," he corrected gently. "It began 3 years ago. In a cupboard. This is just the next part." He felt her smile like sunshine, and the morning stretched before them full of promise and power and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The owl was still waiting on his windowsill, head cocked expectantly. Harry scrawled "I accept" on a piece of notebook paper. He'd write something more formal later if he needed to, and sent the bird on its way with a thought rather than a touch, lifting it gently with telekinesis and placing it back on the outer sill where it could launch into the grey Surrey sky. Then he sat back on his bed, cross-legged, and began to plan. 20 miles away, Hermione did the same. Between them, the bond hummed with potential. Ancient. Deep. Unbreakable. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," he answered. And somewhere in the magical world, in a castle in Scotland, an old man with a silver beard felt something shift in the air, a premonition, perhaps, or the simple instinct of a powerful wizard sensing that the game he'd spent a decade arranging was about to be played by rules he'd never anticipated. Albus Dumbledore looked up from his desk, frowning faintly at nothing. "Interesting," he murmured to his phoenix. Fawkes trilled a single, enigmatic note, and the headmaster returned to his correspondence with a nagging feeling he couldn't name. He'd know soon enough. They all would. Chapter 2, Letters and Lions. Professor McGonagall arrived at the Granger household at precisely 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning, wearing a tweed suit that almost passed for normal and an expression that suggested she had done this many times and expected it to go as it always did. She was wrong about that. Hermione watched from the top of the stairs as her mother opened the door, heard the crisp Scottish voice introduce itself, felt the faint shimmer of magic around the woman like heat rising off summer pavement. Through the bond, she relayed everything to Harry in real time, the professor's bearing, her energy, the controlled power that sat beneath her prim exterior like iron under silk. "She's strong," Harry noted from his bedroom in Little Whinging, lying on his back with his eyes closed, seeing through Hermione's senses. "Not like us, but strong for one person." "She's also nervous," Hermione observed, descending the stairs with a polite smile fixed in place. "Not visibly. But her magic is jittery. She doesn't know what to expect from Muggle parents." Hermione entered the sitting room where her parents were already seated on the sofa, looking curious and slightly bewildered. Professor McGonagall stood by the mantelpiece, back straight, hands clasped. "Ah, Miss Granger. Do sit down. I have quite a lot to explain." Hermione sat in the armchair, tucked her feet beneath her, and said, "You're from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You're here to confirm my place and explain the magical world to my parents, since they're non-magical. You'll probably demonstrate a transfiguration to prove magic is real, since that's your subject. And you'll have a list of supplies I'll need and information about how to access Diagon Alley. She smiled pleasantly. Did I miss anything? The silence that followed was deeply satisfying. McGonagall's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. Hermione's parents exchanged a look that said yes, that's our daughter. How, McGonagall managed, could you possibly know all of that? I've done my research, Hermione said simply. I've known I was magical for several years now. I found some books, old ones. They explained quite a lot. McGonagall recovered with admirable speed, though Hermione could feel her magic flickering with surprise. I see. Well. That's unprecedented, in my experience with Muggle-born students. May I ask what books? Very old ones. I don't think they're in common circulation anymore. Hermione kept her tone light, forthcoming but not revealing. They explained the basics, that magic is real, that there's a hidden society, that there are schools. But I'm sure there's a great deal I don't know yet. I'd love to hear everything you can tell me. This seemed to steady McGonagall, give her back the role of knowledgeable authority. She straightened further, if that was possible, and launched into her explanation with the practiced ease of someone who'd given this speech hundreds of times. The statute of secrecy. The nature of magical education. The basics of the wizarding world. Hermione's parents asked sensible questions, safety, curriculum, distance, and McGonagall answered them all with brisk reassurance. Through it all, Hermione catalogued everything, feeding it to Harry who absorbed it silently. She hasn't mentioned me, Harry noted. Hasn't asked if you know any other magical children. Interesting. She might not know you exist yet. Or she might be keeping it separate. The letter knew my exact bedroom. Someone's been watching. Hermione filed that away for later examination and returned her attention to McGonagall, who was now demonstrating transfiguration by turning the coffee table into a pig and back. Her father clapped. Her mother looked like she needed a drink. Now, McGonagall said, smoothing her skirt, there is the matter of school supplies. Everything you'll need can be purchased in Diagon Alley, that's our shopping district, hidden in the heart of London. I can arrange for someone to take you, or provide directions if you prefer to go independently. Independently, please, Hermione said. My parents can take me. If you give us the directions, we'll manage. Very well. McGonagall withdrew a sealed envelope from her jacket and handed it over. The entrance is through a pub called the Leaky Cauldron on Charing Cross Road. Muggles can't see it, but you'll be able to point it out to your parents once you're there. You'll need to tap the correct brick in the wall behind the pub, the instructions are all in there. She stood, clearly preparing to leave, then paused. Her sharp eyes settled on Hermione with an expression that was harder to read, not suspicious, exactly, but assessing. Miss Granger. You said you've been practicing magic. A little, Hermione said carefully. You should know that underage magic is monitored by the Ministry of Magic. There's a detection system, the Trace, placed on all young witches and wizards. That's a lie, Harry sent instantly. Or at least a half-truth. If it was real, they'd have come for us years ago. Hermione smiled politely. I understand, Professor. I'll be careful. McGonagall nodded, apparently satisfied, and made her goodbyes. Hermione walked her to the door, shook her hand, and felt it. A faint magical probe, so subtle it would have been undetectable to anyone without her level of sensitivity. McGonagall was trying to get a read on her, her magical core, her potential. Hermione let her see exactly what an average Muggle-born's core should look like. It was easy, she'd been managing her visible output for years, the same way Harry learned to appear normal for the Dursleys. Let the surface be unremarkable. Keep the depths hidden until it was time. The door closed. McGonagall walked to the end of the front path, turned, and disappeared with a sharp crack. Well, said Hermione's father from the sitting room doorway, that was something. Hermione grinned. "Dad, how do you feel about a family trip to London?" They went to Diagon Alley on a Saturday, all four of them, Hermione and her parents and Harry, who they'd picked up from Little Whinging under the pretense of taking him to a museum. The Dursleys hadn't cared. They barely acknowledged Harry's existence anymore, and the Grangers, who knew that Harry was Hermione's closest friend, if not the full nature of their connection, had been quietly appalled by the state of him the first time they'd met and had since adopted an unspoken policy of including him in everything they could. Dan and Emma Granger were good people. Kind, intelligent, slightly bewildered by their daughter's extraordinary nature but never frightened of it. They'd accepted Harry into their orbit with the easy warmth of parents who had love to spare, and Harry, who had never experienced casual parental affection, soaked it up like dry earth drinking rain. "You're staring at my mum again," Hermione thought as they drove through London. "She packed me a sandwich," Harry replied. "With the crusts cut off." "She didn't have to do that. She likes you." "They both do. Stop being surprised by it." He couldn't help it. But that was all right. He had time to learn that not all adults were Dursleys. The leaky cauldron materialized between a bookshop and a record store as they approached, visible to Harry and Hermione like a beacon and entirely invisible to the Muggles streaming past. Hermione took her mother's arm, Harry took her father's, and they stepped through the door into the dim, smoky warmth of the pub. Heads turned. A few patrons glanced up with casual interest, then went back to their drinks. The barman, a hunched, bald man named Tom, gave them a gap-toothed smile. "Hogwarts shopping? Right through the back, right through the back." They didn't linger. Hermione led them through to the small courtyard, counted bricks as per McGonagall's instructions, and tapped the correct one with her finger. No wand. No incantation. Just intent, pushed into the brick with the precision of 3 years' practice. The wall melted open into an archway, and Diagon Alley stretched before them. Harry felt Hermione's delight mirror his own as they stepped through. It was magic, not the quiet, personal magic they'd been practicing, but magic as architecture, as culture, as a living, breathing world. The shops leaned at impossible angles, their windows crammed with cauldrons and spell books and brass telescopes. Owls swooped between rooftops. A witch in lime green robes haggled with a goblin over a handful of shimmering coins. The air smelled of cinnamon and parchment and something electric that hummed at the same frequency as the bond. "Oh," said Emma Granger faintly. "Welcome to our world," Hermione murmured, and meant it in more ways than one. Gringotts first. The bank was impossible to miss, white marble, bronze doors, and goblins in scarlet and gold uniforms standing guard with an air of barely contained contempt for all wizard kind. Harry had his key, it had come with his Hogwarts letter, a tiny golden thing that thrummed with magic when he touched it. He'd wondered about that. Someone had his vault key, had sent it with his school letter rather than giving it to him years ago. That meant someone had been managing his affairs. Someone who hadn't bothered to check whether the orphan they'd placed with abusive Muggles was being fed. He tucked the anger away for later. Today was about information. The cart ride into the vaults was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The Grangers, who'd exchanged pounds for galleons at the surface, had stayed above, but Hermione was with Harry, her hand gripping his as the cart plunged through the underground caverns at breakneck speed. Vault 687 opened to reveal a small mountain of gold. Harry stared. Hermione stared through his eyes and through her own. "That's, Harry, that's a fortune." "Yeah." He stepped inside, running his fingers over the coins. "Galleons, sickles, nuts. More money than the Dursleys earned in a year, probably several years. Sitting here. His. While he'd worn Dudley's cast-offs and gone hungry. The anger was harder to tuck away this time. But Hermione's steady presence grounded him, and he filled a bag with coins and stepped back into the cart. "Is there a way to get a full accounting of my holdings?" he asked the goblin driving. The goblin, Grip Hook, he'd said, turned with an expression of surprise, as if children didn't usually ask such things. "You'd need to speak with your account manager, Mr. Potter. I can arrange a meeting." "Please do. At my earliest convenience." Harry's tone was polite but firm. The tone of someone who intended to understand exactly what was his and who'd been touching it. Griphook studied him for a moment, then gave a nod that held something almost like approval. "Very good, Mr. Potter." They moved through the supply list with efficiency. Hermione had organized it by shop and proximity, because of course she had, and they swept through Diagon Alley in a choreographed dance, splitting tasks where it made sense and reconvening seamlessly. Cauldrons and scales from the apothecary. Parchment and quills from Scribulus. Telescope from the brass shop on the corner. Books, oh, the books. Flourish and Blots was a cathedral of knowledge, and Hermione had to be physically steered away from the upper floors by her amused father after she'd spent 20 minutes stroking the spine of a restricted section text on arithmancy. Focus, Harry sent, grinning from 3 aisles away where he was loading their required textbooks into a basket. "I am focused. I'm focused on the fact that there's a whole section on magical theory and we've been working from 3 moldy books for 3 years. We'll come back. We have all the time in the world. Promise? Promise." She grabbed 2 extra books on magical history and 1 on theory and called it restraint. Robes from Madame Awakens, where a pale blonde boy was already being fitted on the next pedestal. He looked Harry up and down with frank curiosity. "Hogwarts too?" "Yes," Harry said. "Know what house you'll be in?" "I know I'll be in Slytherin, whole family's been, you know." "I'm Malfoy. Draco Malfoy." Harry felt Hermione's attention sharpen through the bond. She was 2 shops away, buying ink, but she was listening. "Malfoy. Old pure-blood family. Their names in the history book, and not in the good chapters." "Harry Potter," Harry said, and watched Draco's eyes go wide. "You're Harry Potter? The Harry Potter? Interesting. He was famous here." That tracked with some oblique references in their books, a dark wizard, a war, a child who survived something unsurvivable. Harry hadn't been able to piece together the full story yet, but he knew it involved him and a scar and something terrible happening to his parents. "In the flesh," Harry said evenly. Draco was practically vibrating. "Father's told me all about you. Said you'd be coming to Hogwarts this year. You'll want to be careful who you make friends with, Potter. Some wizarding families are better than others. I can help you there." "He's trying to recruit you," Hermione observed. 11 years old and already talking about the right sort of people. That's taught behavior. Yeah. His father's work, I'd bet. Harry smiled at Draco, not warmly, but not coldly either. The neutral, uncommitted smile of someone cataloging information. "Thanks for the advice. I'll keep it in mind." Draco preened. Harry memorized the shape of his arrogance and filed it away. Useful to know who the players were, even the small ones. Ollivander's was last. They'd saved it deliberately. Hermione wanted them to go together, because if their magic was intertwined, their wand selection might be significant. The shop was narrow and dusty, crammed floor to ceiling with long, thin boxes. The magic here was old, layered, like sediment. Thousands of wands humming behind their cardboard shelves, each one a distinct note in a vast symphony. The bell tinkled as they entered, and a thin, silver-haired man materialized from between the shelves with unsettling silence. "Ah!" His pale eyes moved between them, Harry, then Hermione, then the space between them, as if he could see something there. Given what he was, maybe he could. "Yes. I wondered when I'd be seeing you, Mr. Potter. And you must be Miss Granger." "Yes, yes. Come in." He circled them slowly. His gaze had an intensity that would have been rude in any other context, but here, in this temple of magical craftsmanship, it felt appropriate. He was reading them. Curious, Ollivander murmured. Very curious. There's something, may I? He reached out, not toward either of them, but toward the space between them, fingers extended as if testing the temperature of an invisible flame. Harry and Hermione exchanged a glance. He can sense the bond, Hermione sent. Let him. He's not a threat. And I want to see what he makes of it. Ollivander's fingers trembled. His eyes went wide, then wider, and then he withdrew his hand as if burned, cradling it against his chest. Remarkable, he breathed. In all my years, I have never, he stopped. Swallowed. Composed himself with visible effort. Forgive me. I was not prepared for, but of course. Of course you'd come together. The bond would demand it. You know what we are, Hermione said. Not a question. I know what the stories say. What the old texts describe. I never thought to see it in my lifetime. Ollivander's voice was hushed, almost reverent. A soul bond. A true, deep soul bond. The last recorded instance was, goodness, Helga Hufflepuff and her partner Aldrich, over 1,000 years ago. Will it affect our wands? Harry asked. Ollivander blinked, as if snapping back to professional mode. Affect them? My dear boy, it will define them. Come, let us see what the wands think of you. What followed was unlike any wand selection Ollivander had ever conducted. He told them so, repeatedly, with increasing excitement. Harry's wand came first, Holly and Phoenix Feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. It chose him with a warmth that flooded his palm and sent a shower of gold sparks from the tip. Ollivander's reaction was complex. He muttered about the wand's brother, about connections and curious coincidences, but Harry barely heard him, because the moment he gripped the Holly wand, the bond resonated. Like striking a bell. Like completing a chord. Hermione felt it too. She gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Now you, Miss Granger. Now you. Ollivander was practically bouncing. Hermione's selection took longer. She went through 7 wands, 8, 9, each one reacting to her with varying degrees of temperament but none of them singing the way Harry's had. Ollivander's excitement mounted with each rejection. Yes, of course ordinary combinations won't do, not for you, let me think, he vanished into the back of his shop. They heard crashing, the scrape of boxes, a muttered curse. When he returned, he was holding a box that looked older than the others, its cardboard yellowed and soft. Vine wood, he said, lifting the wand with something approaching tenderness. And dragon heartstring. 10 3/4 inches. I made this wand 43 years ago and it has never chosen anyone. I'd nearly given up on it. Hermione took it. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Not just sparks, light. A pulse of white radiance that filled the shop, warm and clean, and in the same instant, Harry's holly wand blazed in his hand, unbidden, answering Hermione's vine wand like a signal fire finding its twin. Ollivander made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Yes. Oh, yes. Look at them, they're singing to each other. In all my years, he pressed a hand to his mouth, eyes bright. The light faded. Harry and Hermione stood holding their wands, which still hummed faintly, still seemed to lean toward each other across the space between their owners. Mr. Ollivander, Hermione said carefully. I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone about this. He looked at her. Then at Harry. And something shifted in his expression, a softening, an understanding. My dear, he said quietly, I have been keeping the secrets of wands and their wielders for longer than your grandparents have been alive. Your confidence is not misplaced. He paused, then added, but I will tell you this. The world is going to notice you regardless of what I say or don't say. What you carry between you, it's not something that can be hidden forever. Nor, I think, should it be. Harry slid his wand into the pocket of his jeans. It felt like holstering a weapon. Like slotting the final piece into a machine that had been waiting to activate. "We don't intend to hide forever," he said. "Just until it's our choice to reveal." Ollivander smiled. It was not an entirely comfortable smile, there was too much knowledge in it, too much weight. "Then I wish you both the very best of luck. Though I suspect luck has very little to do with what you two will accomplish." They paid for their wands and stepped out into the fading afternoon light of Diagon Alley, magic singing in their bones, ready for whatever came next. Platform 9 3/4 was a chaos of trolleys and trunks and emotional parents and hooting owls. Harry arrived with the Grangers. Hermione's parents had insisted on driving him, and the Dursleys had been only too happy to have him out of the house a day early. They pushed through the barrier together, stepping from the mundane bustle of King's Cross into the steam-shrouded platform beyond. The Hogwarts Express gleamed scarlet against the grey morning, its engine already huffing clouds of white vapor. Students milled everywhere, first years looking terrified, older students greeting friends with shouts and embraces. Hermione's parents hugged them both. Emma Granger held Harry a beat longer than necessary, and he felt the fierce protectiveness in it, this woman who'd known him barely 2 years treating him like one of hers. "You look after each other," Dan Granger said gruffly. "Always," Hermione said, and it was a promise so old between them it barely needed speaking. They found a compartment near the middle of the train, stowed their trunks, and settled in, Hermione by the window, Harry across from her, their legs stretched out on the seats in mirror-image relaxation. "Nervous?" he asked. "Excited." "You?" "Both." He watched the platform through the window. Families saying goodbye, last-minute lunches being passed through windows. A large red-haired family caught his eye, a plump woman surrounded by children of varying heights, all with the same vivid orange hair. "We're walking into a world we've only read about in fragments. We know a lot, but there's more we don't know. Then we learn fast. Like we always do." The train lurched. Parents waved. The platform slid away, replaced by the grey sprawl of London, then suburbs, then open countryside. 15 minutes into the journey, their compartment door slid open. A red-haired boy, one of the family Harry had noticed, stuck his head in. "Anyone sitting here? Everywhere else is full." "Go ahead," Harry said, gesturing to the empty space beside him. The boy dropped into the seat with the graceless relief of someone who'd been dragging a heavy trunk up and down a moving train. He was tall for 11, gangly, with a smudge of dirt on his nose and a resigned expression that spoke of hand-me-downs and being overlooked. "Ron Weasley," he said. "Harry Potter." Ron's eyes went to Harry's forehead, the scar, half hidden by his fringe, and widened. "Blimey. Are you really? Have you got the scar?" "Yes." Harry pushed his hair back briefly, letting Ron see the lightning bolt. He'd stopped being self-conscious about it years ago. It was just a scar. Whatever story lay behind it, the scar itself was just skin. "And this is Hermione Granger." "Hi," Hermione said, looking up from the book she'd already cracked open. Ron's gaze bounced between them. "Are you two, did you know each other before?" "Yes," they said simultaneously, and then shared a grin at the way Ron's eyebrows climbed. "We grew up near each other," Hermione added smoothly. Both Muggle-raised. "We found out about magic together." "Oh. Right." Ron seemed to relax slightly. "I'm pure blood, whole family's magical. Got 5 brothers and a sister. Everyone expects me to be like them, which is, anyway." He flushed, as if embarrassed at having volunteered so much. "What house d'you reckon you'll be in?" "Gryffindor," Harry said without hesitation. "Both of us," Hermione confirmed. Ron blinked. "How'd you know?" "My brothers say you can't know until the Sorting Hat. We know," Harry said simply, and something in his tone, quiet, certain, unarguable, made Ron close his mouth and nod. "Yeah. All right. Gryffindor for me too," probably. Whole family's been in it. He paused. Though Fred and George say the sorting involves wrestling a troll, so maybe I'll just die. Hermione laughed, genuine, surprised, and Harry felt her warmth toward this awkward, earnest boy. It's a hat, she said. It reads your mind and decides where you fit best. Oh, thank Merlin. Ron slumped with relief. I can handle a hat. The rest of the train journey passed easily. Ron was simple company in the best sense, uncomplicated, funny, refreshingly without agenda. He talked about his family with a mix of pride and exasperation that Harry found quietly fascinating. 6 siblings. 2 parents. A house called the Burrow that sounded warm and chaotic and full of life. He's lonely too, Hermione observed privately. Different flavor than ours, but it's there. Always being compared to his brothers. Yeah. I like him, though. He's genuine. Me too. They bought sweets from the trolley which. Ron tried to refuse. I've got sandwiches, Mom made corned beef, but Harry had already purchased half the cart and insisted on sharing. The look on Ron's face when Harry pushed chocolate frogs and cauldron cakes toward him was almost painfully grateful. You don't have to, I want to. Eat. Ron ate. Draco Malfoy appeared halfway through the journey, flanked by 2 large boys who looked like bodyguards. He leaned in the doorway with studied casualness. So it's true. Harry Potter's on the train. His eyes swept the compartment, lingering on Ron with barely concealed disdain, dismissing Hermione entirely. I see you found your level. Potter, you'll soon learn some wizarding families are much better than others. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. He extended a hand. I can help you there. The compartment went quiet. Ron flushed scarlet. Hermione didn't look up from her book, but through the bond, Harry felt her coiled attention, sharp, watchful, ready. Harry looked at Draco's outstretched hand. Then at Draco's face. The boy's expression was confident, assured. He genuinely believed this would work, because it probably always had. In his world, the Malfoy name was currency enough. No thanks, Harry said. Calm. Unbothered. I'm pretty good at figuring out who's worth my time. Draco's hand hovered in empty air. A flush crept up his pale neck. You'll regret that, Potter. My father isn't here, Harry said. And I don't much care what he thinks either. Close the door on your way out. The 2 large boys shifted, looking to Draco for direction. Draco's jaw worked. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in his gray eyes that might have been uncertainty. Then his face hardened into a sneer. Fine. Have it your way. But when you realize your mistake, door, Harry repeated. Draco left. The door slid shut behind him, pushed by nothing visible, closing with a definitive click. Ron stared at Harry. That was, do you know who his dad is? Lucius Malfoy. He's on the Hogwarts Board of Governors. Don't care, Harry said. He's rich as sin and probably a Death Eater. Still don't care. Ron's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. Then he broke into a grin so wide it nearly split his face. Brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. Hermione turned a page, hiding her own smile. Night had fallen by the time the train pulled into Hogsmeade Station. The students poured out into cold Scottish air, breath misting, and a massive figure with a lantern was calling first years toward a fleet of boats on a black lake. Furs years. Furs years over here. All right, Harry. The giant man, Hagrid, he introduced himself as, beamed down at Harry with a warmth that seemed personal, as if they had history. Probably the one who delivered me to the Dursleys, Harry thought, and wasn't sure how to feel about that. The boats carried them across the lake in silence, and then Hogwarts rose before them and Harry forgot to feel anything but awe. It was alive. He could feel it. The castle wasn't just stone and mortar, it breathed with magic, ancient and layered, the accumulated enchantments of 1,000 years humming in its walls like a heartbeat. Beside him in the boat, Hermione inhaled sharply. She felt it too. Harry, I know. The magic in this place, it's older than the bond. I know. He reached for her hand in the darkness and found it already reaching for his. The bond pulsed between them, resonating with the castle's magic like two instruments finding harmony. The castle felt them back. Harry was sure of it. Something in the ancient walls shifted, a tremor of awareness, a recognition, and then settled, and they passed beneath the arched entrance without incident. But he filed it away. The castle knew they were here. The sorting took place in a vast hall lit by floating candles, the ceiling enchanted to mirror the sky outside, clear tonight, stars scattered like spilled salt. For long tables stretched the length of the hall, students watching the nervous cluster of first years with varying degrees of interest and hunger. At the head table, the staff sat in a row. Harry catalogued them quickly, feeding observations through the bond to Hermione, who fed her own back. The large man in the turban whose magic felt wrong, layered, doubled, as if two things occupied the same space. The hook-nosed man in black who was staring at Harry with an intensity that bordered on hostile. And at the center, presiding over all of it, an elderly man with half-moon spectacles and a silver beard that reached his belt. Albus Dumbledore. Harry recognized him from the chocolate frog cards Ron had shown him on the train. The old wizard's eyes found Harry in the crowd and stayed there. Twinkling. Assessing. He's looking at you, Hermione sent. I know. Let him look. The man in the turban, Harry, there's something deeply wrong with his magic. It's double. Like two signals on the same frequency. Yeah. I felt it too. We'll figure that out later. Focus on the sorting. Professor McGonagall stood beside a stool on which sat a battered, ancient hat. She unfurled a scroll and began calling names. Students went up one by one, the hat was placed on their heads, and it called out houses. Harry watched the process, studying the hat's magic with his other senses. It was old, impossibly old, saturated with the same deep magic as the castle walls. Sentient. And powerful, in its narrow domain. Granger, Hermione. She squeezed his hand once, a physical and mental reassurance, and walked to the stool with her spine straight and her chin up. Not the nervous shuffle of the other first years. The measured stride of someone who knew exactly who she was. The hat settled on her head and Harry felt it through the bond, a foreign presence touching Hermione's mind, sorting through thoughts and memories and, it hit the bond. Harry felt the impact. Like the hat had been walking through an ordinary room and suddenly stepped off a cliff. Its awareness plunged into the bond, touched what lived there, and recoiled. Through Hermione's ears, he heard its voice, a whispered conversation meant only for the wearer, Great Merlin. What are you? I'm Hermione Granger, she thought clearly. And I'd like to be in Gryffindor, please. Child, this bond, I haven't felt anything like this since, do you understand what you carry? Completely. Gryffindor, if you don't mind. A long pause. Harry could feel the hat thinking, processing, and beneath its shock, a growing delight. The courage to walk into a new world already knowing you'll reshape it. The nerve to ask politely for what you could demand. Oh yes. You and your bonded both, I know where you belong. Gryffindor, the hat bellowed, and the table on the far left erupted in cheers. Hermione walked to the Gryffindor table, sat down, and caught Harry's eye across the hall. Your turn, she sent with a grin. It took a while to get to P. Harry watched the other sortings with half his attention. The Malfoy boy went to Slytherin before the hat touched his head. Ron's brothers cheered preemptively at the Gryffindor table. When his name was called, the hall went silent. Then the whispers started. Potter? Did she say Potter? Harry Potter? The Harry Potter? He ignored them. Walked to the stool. Saturday. The hat descended over his eyes, blocking out the staring Hull. Ah, said a voice in his mind. The other half. I've been waiting for you. Hello, Harry thought. Mr. Potter. I have sorted thousands upon thousands of students. I have never encountered what I found in Miss Granger's mind. And now here you are, and it's even more extraordinary from this side. The hat paused. The last time a deep soul bond walked through these doors, the bonded pair built this school. Harry absorbed that. Interesting. Gryffindor, please. Obviously Gryffindor. Though Slytherin would serve you well, there's ambition in you, oh yes. A desire to never be powerless again. To never be the boy in the cupboard. I'm not that boy anymore. And I'm not interested in Slytherin. No. You're interested in being exactly where your bonded is. As it should be. The hat's voice warmed. A word of advice, Mr. Potter, from the oldest enchanted object in this castle, don't let them diminish you. Either of you. What you are is rare and precious and powerful beyond anything this school is prepared for. They will try to fit you into boxes. Refuse. I intend to. Then welcome home. Gryffindor. The Gryffindor table exploded. Harry removed the hat, set it on the stool, and walked to sit beside Hermione amid thunderous applause and the Weasley twins chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter." Under the table, Hermione's hand found his. Welcome home, she echoed, and he felt it, the rightness of it, of being here, together, in this ancient place that had recognized them before anyone else did. At the head table, Dumbledore was watching. Still twinkling. But there was something else in his expression now, a faint crease between his brows, the first shadow of uncertainty. Good, Harry thought. Let him wonder. Their first evening in Gryffindor Tower was a whirlwind of introductions and exclamations. Harry's fame preceded him in ways he found alternately amusing and irritating. Everyone wanted to shake his hand, ask about his scar, get close to the boy who lived. He handled it with patience because Hermione's steady calm through the bond kept him anchored, but by the time they found themselves in a quiet corner of the common room near the dying fire, he was exhausted. Ron dropped into the armchair beside them with the boneless collapse of the truly tired. Bloody hell. Is it always going to be like that for you? Everyone staring. Probably, Harry said. They'll get bored eventually. Not likely, mate. You're Harry Potter. Ron said it like it was an explanation in itself. I don't really know what that means yet, Harry admitted. I know something happened to me as a baby, something to do with a dark wizard. But no one's actually told me the full story. Ron gaped. You don't, blimey, Harry. You know who killed your parents. Tried to kill you too, but the curse bounced back somehow. That's why you're famous, you're the only person who ever survived the killing curse. The common room was mostly empty now, just a few upper years in the far corner. Harry felt the weight of Ron's words settle, not with shock, because he'd suspected something like this, but with the specific gravity of confirmation. His parents had been murdered. The scar on his forehead was from the attempt on his life. And the wizarding world had made him famous for surviving something he couldn't remember. Hermione's presence in the bond tightened around him, not intrusively, just there, warm and solid and reminding him he wasn't alone with this. I'm okay, he sent. I expected something like this. I know you're okay. But you're allowed to not be okay later, if you need to. Later. Not now. Aloud, he said to Ron, this dark wizard. You know who. What was his name? Ron flinched. We don't, people don't say it. Why not? It's bad luck. He was, really awful, Harry. Killed loads of people. Everyone's scared of even the name. What is it? Ron swallowed. Leaned closer. Whispered, Voldemort. The word hung in the air between them. Harry turned it over in his mind, felt it through the bond, felt Hermione cataloging it, cross-referencing against what they'd read, and felt his scar twinge. Not painfully. Not even uncomfortably. Just, a response. Like the scar recognized the name. Like something inside it stirred in its sleep. Through the bond, Hermione felt it too. Her mental voice was sharp and focused. Harry. Something in your scar just reacted to that name. Something magical. Something that's not yours. I know. I've felt it before, a dormant energy. Never knew what it was connected to. We need to examine it. Carefully. Together. Tomorrow, he promised. Right now I want to just, be here. Be a student for 5 minutes. She relented, though he could feel her analytical mind still chewing on it. Tomorrow, she agreed. Ron was watching them. They hadn't spoken aloud for several seconds and Harry realized the silence might seem odd. Sorry, Harry said. Just, processing. Yeah, course. Sorry for dumping all that on you. I figured you knew. No. I'm glad you told me. I'd rather know than not. Ron nodded, looking relieved, then yawned enormously. Right. Well. I'm knackered. First-year dorms are up the stairs on the left, yeah. That's what Percy said. Harry stood, stretched. Coming, Hermione. In a minute. I want to finish this chapter. She held up the magical theory book she'd bought in Flourish and Blots. Harry snorted. Don't stay up all night. Go to sleep, Harry. Yes, ma'am. He followed Ron up the spiral staircase to the first-year boys' dormitory, where 5 four-poster beds waited. His trunk was already at the foot of one, Hedwig dozing in her cage on the bedside table. He changed, climbed into bed, pulled the curtains shut. Through the bond, Hermione was still reading, her focus a warm backdrop to his consciousness, like falling asleep with someone nearby, the comfort of shared space. Hermione. HM. We're here. We made it. We did. He felt her smile. And tomorrow it really begins. He slept. Deeply, dreamlessly, in a castle that hummed with ancient magic that recognized him and his bonded as kin. The first day of classes established the pattern that would define their Hogwarts experience. Harry and Hermione were effortlessly, undeniably, unignorably exceptional. It started in Transfiguration. Professor McGonagall, head of Gryffindor, the woman who'd visited Hermione's home, set them the task of turning a match into a needle. The class struggled. Wands waved. Incantations were attempted with varying degrees of accuracy. Matches stubbornly remained matches. Harry and Hermione looked at each other. Shall we? He asked. Let's see what wands do. They hadn't used wands before, everything they'd ever done was wandless, powered by raw will and refined by 3 years of practice. The wand was a new variable. They were curious about it. Harry pointed his holly wand at his match. He didn't use the incantation McGonagall had demonstrated, instead, he simply intended the change, the way he always did, and used the wand as a focus for that intention. The match didn't become a needle. It became a sword. A perfectly proportioned, gleaming silver miniature sword, 3 inches long, fine as a hatpin and sharp enough to cut light. It lay on his desk, catching the candlelight, and the entire class went silent. Harry stared at it. Through the bond, Hermione was staring at her own desk, where her match had become an exquisite silver needle, but not a plain one. It was engraved with microscopic runes along its length, gleaming with inner light, clearly magical in its own right. McGonagall set down the textbook she'd been holding. Walked slowly to Harry's desk. Looked at the sword. Looked at Harry. Mr. Potter, she said carefully. What did you just do? Transfigured my match, Professor. Isn't that what you asked? I asked you to transfigure it into a needle. Harry looked at the tiny sword. Ah. Sorry. I was thinking about weapons and it went a bit further than intended. McGonagall stared at him for a long moment. Then she walked to Hermione's desk and examined the runic needle. She picked it up with 2 fingers and held it to the light. Her hands trembled slightly. Miss Granger. These runes, protection sigils, Hermione said. The match was wood, the needle is metal, and I thought, well, I wanted it to be useful, not just sharp. You inscribed working protective runes on your first transfiguration attempt. Was I not supposed to? McGonagall set the needle down. Straightened. Looked between the 2 of them with an expression that seemed to be recalculating everything she thought she knew. Full marks, she said. Both of you. And please see me after class. The after-class conversation was brief. McGonagall studied them with the same sharp assessment Hermione remembered from her living room visit, and this time there was no hiding behind averages. They'd shown their hand, at least partially. You've practiced before. Both of you. Extensively. Yes, Harry said. No point in denying it. How? Muggle-raised children can't, you'd need instruction, theory, we found books, Hermione said. Old ones. And we're fast learners. McGonagall's lips thinned. You understand that performing magic outside Hogwarts before the age of 17 is illegal? We understand that's the rule, Harry said mildly. We also understand that the trace only detects magic in Muggle areas when it's performed near registered underage wizards, meaning Muggleborns are monitored while purebloods practice freely at home. So you'll forgive us if we don't feel particularly guilty about evening the playing field. The silence was deafening. McGonagall's nostrils flared, but something in her expression shifted. Not anger. Something more like reluctant respect. Be that as it may, she said finally, you are now at Hogwarts, where your education is my responsibility. I expect you to attend all classes and complete all assignments, regardless of whether you feel they're below your level. Of course, Professor, Hermione said smoothly. We're here to learn. McGonagall's eye twitched. She clearly suspected she was being managed. She was correct. Go on, then. Off to your next class. And Mr. Potter, please aim for needles in future. Not weaponry. Yes, Professor. They left her office and walked side by side through the corridor, feeling the weight of her gaze on their backs until they turned the corner. That could have gone worse, Hermione offered. She's going to tell Dumbledore. Obviously. Let her. We can handle whatever comes. Charms was next, and Professor Flitwick, a tiny, enthusiastic man who stood on a stack of books to see over his desk, was even more delighted than McGonagall was unsettled. When Harry and Hermione produced perfect levitation charms on the first attempt, wordlessly, he fell off his book stack with excitement and had to be helped up by students in the front row. Extraordinary. Simply extraordinary. Natural prodigies, both of you, in all my years, it went similarly in every class. Herbology, Professor Sprout watched open-mouthed as Hermione coaxed a dying plant back to vibrant life with a touch. Astronomy, Harry corrected the professor's star chart with casual precision. History of magic, they both slept through, because even exceptional talent couldn't make Professor Binns interesting, and they already knew the material from their own research. The exception was potions. Professor Snape's classroom was in the dungeons, cold, dim, lined with jars of things that floated in murky liquid. The man himself swept in with robes billowing and an expression that could curdle milk, and Harry felt the hostility radiating from him like heat from a furnace. Ah, yes, Snape said silkily, his dark eyes fixing on Harry with unsettling intensity. Harry Potter. Our new celebrity. Harry met his gaze evenly and said nothing. Snape launched into a rapid-fire interrogation. Potter. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Draught of living death, Harry said. He felt Hermione's knowledge feeding through the bond, but he didn't need it. He'd read their potions textbook cover to cover. Snape's eye twitched. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? Stomach of a goat. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? They're the same plant. Also called aconite. Silence. Snape's nostrils flared. Whatever reaction he'd been hoping for, confusion, humiliation, he hadn't gotten it, and the failure made his expression colder. Well, he said. It seems fame isn't everything. Pity your father never showed such studiousness. The mention of his father was clearly meant to provoke. Harry felt the barb, felt Hermione's flare of anger through the bond, but he kept his face neutral. You knew my father. I did. Snape's voice was flat. Loaded. And I see a great deal of him in you. Thank you, Harry said. Because whatever Snape meant by it, and it clearly wasn't a compliment, Harry wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Snape stared. Something moved behind his eyes, frustration, confusion, the barest flicker of something that might have been grief, and then he turned away sharply. Open your books. Page 14. The rest of potions was uncomfortable but manageable. Snape prowled the room, criticizing everyone and everything, and when he reached Harry's cauldron, in which a perfect boil-cure potion simmered at exactly the right color and consistency, he stared at it for 5 full seconds before sweeping on without a word. He hates you, Hermione sent. But it's not really about you. It's older than you. My parents. Something about my father. And your mother, I think. Did you see his face when you asked if he knew your father? The pain wasn't about James Potter. Lily. Harry stirred his potion, thinking. He knew my mother. Loved her, maybe. And now you're here with her eyes and his face and he can't handle it. Harry filed it away. Snape was complicated, dangerous in a petty authority figure way, but the roots of his hatred ran deeper than malice. Understanding those roots meant Harry could predict him, manage him, keep him from being a meaningful obstacle. He's not a threat, Harry decided. He's a man in pain taking it out on children. Pathetic more than dangerous. Agreed. But we should still watch him. Unstable people are unpredictable. The first week established their reputation beyond any possibility of anonymity. By Friday, everyone in their year, and most of the upper years, knew that Potter and Granger were something unprecedented. The first years whispered about it in corridors. The upper years debated it at meals. What was less noticed, because it happened quietly and without drama, was how quickly they built alliances. Ron became a fixture at their side, loyal, funny, disarmingly genuine. He didn't fully understand what Harry and Hermione were to each other, but he'd accepted it with the pragmatism of a boy who'd grown up with 5 brothers. Some things just were, and you rolled with them. In return, Harry and Hermione gave him something he'd never had, attention. Not as another Weasley or Ron, the 6th son, but as Ron, his own person, with his own value. Neville Longbottom attached himself to their orbit after Hermione helped him find his toad 3 times in one day, and Harry quietly ensured that Draco Malfoy's attempts to bully the shy boy were met with immediate, inexplicable magical consequences. Draco's shoelaces tied themselves together with remarkable frequency that first week. The Weasley twins, Fred and George, recognized kindred spirits in rule-bending and attached themselves with cheerful determination, offering corridor shortcuts and teacher schedules in exchange for the sheer entertainment of watching Harry and Hermione operate. By Sunday evening, they had a circle. Small but genuine. People who liked them for themselves, not for Harry's scar or Hermione's grades. Not bad for 1 week, Harry thought, sprawled in his favorite common room armchair while Hermione read on the sofa and Ron lost spectacularly at chess against himself. Not bad at all, Hermione agreed. But it's going to get harder. Dumbledore wants a meeting with you. I heard McGonagall mention it to Flitwick. Let him want. I'll meet him when I'm ready. Harry, when I'm ready, he repeated. And through the bond, she felt his reasoning. Every interaction on someone else's timetable was an interaction on their terms. He would meet the headmaster. But it would be when Harry chose, and on ground Harry chose, and the old man would learn from the start that this particular student was not a piece to be moved. You're right, she conceded. But don't make him wait too long. Curiosity in powerful people can become suspicion, and suspicion becomes action. One more week. Let him see what we are in classes. Let the staff talk. Then I'll go, armed with their own impressions as leverage. Hermione smiled behind her book. When did you get so strategic? I learned from the best. A wash of warmth through the bond, affection, gratitude, partnership. We're going to be fine here, Hermione. Better than fine, she corrected. We're going to be extraordinary. He didn't argue. It wasn't arrogance. It was simply the truth, spoken between two people who'd spent 3 years becoming something the world had forgotten was possible, who'd walked into this castle knowing their own worth, and who had absolutely no intention of letting anyone diminish them. Hogwarts wasn't ready for them. But they were ready for it. Chapter 3, The Weight of Eyes. The meeting with Dumbledore came on a Thursday evening, 2 weeks into term, and it happened on Harry's terms, which meant it happened because Harry walked up to the gargoyle guarding the headmaster's office after dinner and said, "I'd like to speak with Professor Dumbledore, please." The gargoyle stared at him with stony indifference. "He's been wanting to see me," Harry added. "I'm sure he won't mind." The gargoyle leapt aside. The spiral staircase began to turn. Harry rode it upward, Hermione's awareness wrapped around him like armor, seeing through his eyes, ready to feed him anything he needed. The office was extraordinary. Circular, cluttered with silver instruments that whirred and puffed, lined with portraits of sleeping headmasters and headmistresses. A phoenix, gorgeous, scarlet and gold, sat on a perch near the desk, and it lifted its head when Harry entered, fixing him with an intelligent eye that saw far more than plumage should allow. Dumbledore sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, half-moon spectacles perched on his crooked nose. He didn't look surprised to see Harry. He looked like he'd been waiting. "Harry, my boy. Do come in." "Lemon drop?" "No, thank you." Harry sat in the chair opposite the desk without being invited. Not rudely, just without the hesitation of a child seeking permission. "You wanted to see me." "I did." Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled. "Though I confess I expected to be the one issuing the invitation. You've been rather elusive these first weeks." "Busy. New school. Lots to learn." "Indeed. And from what your professors tell me, you've been learning at quite a remarkable pace. You and Miss Granger both." Harry waited. Dumbledore was a man who wielded silence as a tool, leaving gaps for others to fill, to reveal more than they intended. Harry had no intention of filling anything. The silence stretched. Dumbledore's twinkle dimmed fractionally. "Harry, I want you to know that my door is always open to you. Your parents were very dear to me. Your father especially was. What happened to them?" The directness seemed to catch Dumbledore off guard. Just for a second, a flicker of recalculation behind those blue eyes. "Ah. I had wondered when you'd ask." "I'm asking now." Dumbledore leaned back in his chair. The whimsical grandfather act shifted, subtly, but Harry caught it, into something more serious. More real, perhaps, though with this man it was hard to tell where performance ended and authenticity began. "Your parents were murdered by a dark wizard named Lord Voldemort, on the night of October 31st, 1981. You were 15 months old. Voldemort came to your home in Godric's Hollow specifically to kill you, based on a prophecy he'd heard, one that identified you as a potential threat to his power." Prophecy, Hermione's thought was sharp through the bond. "That's important. Get the wording if you can." "He killed your father first," Dumbledore continued, and his voice had lowered, taken on weight. "James fought to give your mother time to escape. She chose instead to stand between Voldemort and your crib. She refused to step aside, and when he killed her, her sacrifice created a protection. Ancient magic. Love made manifest. When Voldemort turned his wand on you, the curse rebounded. Destroyed his body. Left you with that scar. Harry touched his forehead reflexively. The scar was cool. Dormant. But he's not dead. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. What makes you say that? Because you said it destroyed his body. Not him. Harry held the old man's gaze. And because people are still afraid of his name. You don't fear a dead man's name. Something shifted in Dumbledore's expression. Reassessment. He was looking at Harry differently now, not at a child he needed to manage, but at an unknown quantity. You are correct, Dumbledore said slowly. Voldemort is not dead. Diminished, bodiless, but not dead. He exists in some form, somewhere, and I believe he will attempt to return. And when he does, he'll come for me. Yes. Because of the prophecy. Yes. Which says what, exactly? Another pause. Longer this time. Harry could see Dumbledore weighing it, how much to reveal, how much to hold back, the instinct to control information warring with something else. Perhaps the recognition that the boy in front of him wasn't going to be managed the way he'd planned. I think, Dumbledore said carefully, that the full contents of the prophecy are a conversation for when you're older. When you've had time to, Professor. Harry's voice was quiet but carried the same unmovable quality he'd used on Vernon Dursley 2 years ago. A man killed my parents over this prophecy. He tried to kill me over it. I'm the subject of it. I have a right to know what it says. Dumbledore studied him. Seconds ticked by. The phoenix trilled softly. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, Dumbledore said finally, each word measured. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not. And either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The words settled in the air between them. Through the bond, Harry felt Hermione's mind seize them, turn them over, begin parsing. Power the Dark Lord knows not, she sent. That's us, Harry. That's the bond. Maybe. Or the love protection Dumbledore mentioned. Or both. Either must die at the hand of the other. That's, Harry, that's a kill or be killed prophecy. I know. But he didn't feel afraid. He'd processed the possibility of danger long ago, processed it the night an 8-year-old boy in a cupboard reached out into the dark and found he wasn't alone. Fear required a sense of helplessness, and Harry hadn't felt helpless in 3 years. Thank you for telling me, Harry said aloud. Dumbledore looked, unsettled. Like the conversation had gone somewhere he hadn't planned. Harry, I want you to understand, I have spent the last decade working to ensure your safety. Placing you with your aunt's family, where your mother's blood protection could, the Dursleys were abusive. It landed like a slap. Dumbledore went very still. They locked me in a cupboard for 10 years. They starved me. Vernon hit me. Harry's voice remained steady, factual, not accusatory, which somehow made it worse. Whatever protection the blood wards provided, it came at a cost you either knew about and accepted, or didn't bother to check on. I'm not sure which is worse. The office was silent. Even the portraits had stopped pretending to sleep. Harry, Dumbledore's voice was rough. Barely above a whisper. There were safeguards. Mrs. Fig reported, Mrs. Fig? The cat lady on Wisteria Walk. Harry's tone was flat. She saw me in Dudley's old clothes, half-starved, and reported what, exactly? That everything was fine. Dumbledore seemed to age 10 years in the space of a breath. His hand trembled as he removed his spectacles and pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose. And Harry, who had not come here to wound this man but only to establish the truth between them, felt a complicated knot of something in his chest. Not forgiveness. Not anger, exactly. Something in between. "I am sorry," Dumbledore said. His voice was different now, stripped of performance, of twinkling grandfatherly warmth. Raw. "I made decisions based on what I believed was the greater good. I was wrong. I failed you." Through the bond, Hermione sent, "He means it. I can feel his magic, it's in turmoil. Whatever else he is, the guilt is real." "I know," Harry thought. "But guilt doesn't undo 10 years. Aloud, "I'm not telling you this to punish you, Professor. I'm telling you so you understand where we stand. I'm not your weapon. I'm not your chess piece. I'm a student at your school, and I'll learn what you have to teach me. But my choices are my own. My life is my own. I won't be placed anywhere or guided anywhere or manipulated anywhere. If you need my help against Voldemort, ask me. Honestly. Don't maneuver." Dumbledore replaced his spectacles. His eyes were red-rimmed but his gaze was steady. "You are very like your mother," he said softly. "She too could pin me to the wall with a truth I didn't want to hear. Then maybe you should have listened to her. Perhaps I should have." A heavy breath. "Harry. I hear you. I cannot undo the past, but I can promise you this, I will not move you without your knowledge again. If I believe something concerns your safety or your future, I will tell you directly. That's all I'm asking." Harry stood. The conversation had served its purpose, established boundaries, extracted crucial information, demonstrated that Harry Potter was not the malleable orphan Dumbledore had planned for. It was enough. He turned to go, then paused at the door. "One more thing, Professor. The man in the turban, Professor Quirrell. There's something wrong with him. Something in his magic that doesn't belong to him." Dumbledore's expression went very, very careful. "What makes you say that?" "I can feel it. So can Hermione." Harry met his eyes. "I don't know what it is yet. But I will." He left before Dumbledore could respond, riding the spiral staircase down and stepping past the gargoyle into the quiet corridor. Through the bond, Hermione flooded him with warmth and fierce pride. "That was perfect. You were perfect. I don't know about perfect. But he heard me. He heard you. And now he knows he can't play you." A pause, then, with gentle humor, "Also, his face when you mention Quirrell. He knows something. He knows exactly what Quirrell is. Which means he's keeping something dangerous in the castle deliberately. We need to find out what." The third-floor corridor, Hermione thought immediately. "The one we were warned away from at the welcome feast. Most painful death," he said. "That's not a standard school safety warning. No. It's bait. Or a trap. Or a test." Harry turned the corner toward Gryffindor Tower, his mind working. Either way, it's something Dumbledore put there and something Quirrell, or whatever's riding him, wants. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. But tomorrow brought something else first. Harry woke to Ron shaking his shoulder, wide-eyed and still in pajamas. "Harry, Harry, wake up. There's something, you need to come see this." The common room was crowded for 6:30 in the morning. Students in dressing gowns clustered around the notice board, whispering. Hermione was already there. Harry felt her before he saw her, felt the sharp spike of her attention focused on whatever was pinned to the board. He pushed through the crowd and read, "Notice from the headmaster in light of recent incidents, students are reminded that the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side remains strictly out of bounds. Additionally, any student found performing magic beyond their year level in the corridors will be reported to their head of house. P.W.B. Dumbledore magic beyond their year level," Hermione's thought was dry. "That's aimed at us. Obviously." Harry read the notice again. He's trying to establish limits without confronting us directly. Interesting approach. It won't work. No. It won't. Ron appeared at his shoulder, squinting at the notice. What you reckon that's about? The bit about magic beyond your level? Us, probably, Harry said. Yeah, I figured. Ron scratched his nose. You going to stop? Harry looked at him. Ron shrugged with a grin that said he already knew the answer. Stupid question, Ron conceded. They had defense against the dark arts that morning, which meant an hour with Quirrell and whatever was living inside him. The classroom smelled strongly of garlic, supposedly because of a vampire Quirrell had faced in Albania, though Harry suspected the real reason was to mask whatever other magical signatures the room might carry. It didn't work. The moment Harry crossed the threshold, he felt it, the doubled presence, the overlaid magic, the sense of something watching from behind Quirrell's nervous, stuttering exterior. Hermione sat beside him, and through the bond, her senses sharpened his. Together, they could perceive what individually they might have missed, the way Quirrell's turban wasn't just cloth but was wrapped around something alive, the way his magic flickered between two distinct signatures depending on which direction he faced. It's in the back of his head, Hermione realized with a jolt of revulsion. Whatever it is, it's physically attached to him. Under the turban. Two people. One body. Harry kept his face neutral as Quirrell stammered through a lecture on defensive jinxes. The weaker signature is Quirrell himself. The stronger one, is something old. And dark. And powerful. Voldemort. The thought came to both of them simultaneously. The doubled presence. The dark magic that reminded Harry of the twinge in his scar. The way Quirrell had looked at Harry at the welcome feast with an intensity that didn't match his bumbling persona. Voldemort was in the castle. On the back of a teacher's head. 20 feet from them. Harry felt his scar warming, not with pain, but with awareness. The fragment in his scar responding to the fragment in the room. Like calling to like. And then something happened that neither of them expected. The bond surged. It flared without warning, hot and bright and protective, rushing toward Harry's scar like white blood cells swarming in infection. The warmth in his scar became heat, became a sharp burning, and then stopped. Went cold. Whatever the bond had done, whatever it had attacked, the scar went dormant in a way it never had before. Harry. Hermione grabbed his hand under the desk. Are you, fine? I'm fine. He was more than fine. He felt, cleaner. Like a window that had been slightly smudged was suddenly clear. The bond did something. To the scar. To whatever's inside it. It attacked it. Her mind was racing, analytical even in her concern. The bond has a defensive function we didn't know about. It identified the thing in your scar as foreign, as a threat, and attacked it. Like an immune system. Exactly like an immune system. She paused. Harry, if Voldemort left something in your scar, a piece of himself, maybe, from the night he killed your parents, then the bond is eating it. They sat with that for the rest of the lesson, barely hearing Quirrell's stammered lecture, their minds turning over implications. If there was a piece of Voldemort's soul in Harry's scar, and the more they considered it, the more it fit, then the bond was destroying it. Slowly, maybe. Passively. But destroying it nonetheless. At the front of the room, Quirrell's hand went to his turban. He'd paused mid-sentence, his head cocked as if listening to something no one else could hear. Then his gaze swung to Harry, sharp, penetrating, entirely unlike his usual nervous flutter. Their eyes met. Harry felt the force of whatever lived behind Quirrell's face, felt it push against him, a probe of dark magic seeking entry, seeking the fragment in his scar. And found nothing. The bond was a wall. A fortress. Whatever door had existed between Voldemort and that scar fragment was sealed now, bricked up by something older and stronger than dark magic. The presence behind Quirrell's eyes recoiled. Quirrell's face went white. He fumbled his notes, stammered an excuse about feeling ill, and dismissed the class 10 minutes early. Students packed up, chattering about the early release. Harry didn't move immediately. He watched Quirrell hurry from the room, turban slightly askew, and felt no fear at all. He tried to reach you, Hermione thought. Through the scar. And he couldn't. No. He couldn't. Harry picked up his bag. He knows now. That I'm not what he expected. Good. Let him worry. The following weeks established a rhythm. Classes, which Harry and Hermione dominated without effort, earning points in spectacular bursts that put Gryffindor firmly in the lead, were interspersed with their real education, private practice sessions, investigation of the castle's secrets, and careful surveillance of Quirrell. They practiced in an unused classroom on the 7th floor that they'd found by following the castle's magic, a room that seemed to shift its contents based on what they needed, providing targets for spellwork or cushioned floors for physical training or bookshelves full of exactly the texts they were looking for. This room is sentient, Hermione marveled one evening as she leafed through a book on soul bonds that had appeared on a shelf the moment she'd wished for it. Or at least responsive to magical intent. Harry, this is remarkable. The castle likes us, Harry said simply. He was practicing combat transfiguration across the room, turning blocks of wood into animals, then back, then into weapons, then into shields, seamlessly and without pause. The wand amplified everything. What had been impressive wandlessly became extraordinary with a focus. It's been helpful since we arrived. Opening passages when we need them, hiding us from Filch. Maybe it remembers us. The hat said the last deep bond built this school. Hufflepuff and her partner. Harry vanished a wooden wolf mid-leap and conjured a wall of ice in its place. Makes sense. If they're part of the castle's foundations, its magical DNA, then it would recognize us. We should explore more. Map the castle. Understand its systems. Fred and George have a map, Harry said. A magical one. Shows the whole castle and everyone in it. They showed me last week. Hermione looked up sharply. And you didn't tell me? I'm telling you now. They wouldn't let me borrow it, but I got a look. It's impressive work, probably made by students decades ago. But I think we could make something better. He dissolved the ice wall and turned to face her, wand spinning idly between his fingers. Our own map. Linked to our bond, so we can access it mentally. Always know where everyone is, what the castle's doing, where the passages lead. That's ambitious. We've got time. He grinned. Want to start tonight? They started that night. It took 3 weeks and an enormous amount of combined power, but by mid-October they had their own map, not on paper, but imprinted directly into the bond, a three-dimensional magical model of Hogwarts that existed in their shared awareness like a permanent background process. A thought could summon it to the front of their minds, showing them every person, every passage, every shifting staircase in real time. It was through this map that they confirmed what they'd suspected about the third-floor corridor, Fluffy, the three-headed dog, guarding a trapdoor. Below the trapdoor, a series of magical protections. And at the center of those protections, an object that burned with such concentrated magical significance that it showed up on their mental map like a small sun. What is it? Harry wondered, studying the golden blip from the comfort of the Gryffindor common room. Something worth killing for, apparently. Hermione was curled in her usual spot on the sofa, outwardly reading, inwardly examining their map. And Quirrell, look. Harry looked. On the map, Quirrell's doubled signature was pacing the third-floor corridor. Again. This was the 4th time this week. He's trying to figure out how to get past the dog, Harry realized. He wants whatever's down there. And Dumbledore knows, that's why he warned students away. He's using the protections as a trap. Dangling bait and waiting for Quirrell to make his move. Using a school full of children as the setting for his trap. Harry's jaw tightened. Are we going to do something about it? Not yet. I want to know what we're dealing with first. What's worth this level of security, and this level of risk? The answer came from an unexpected source. Hagrid, the enormous groundskeeper, had taken a shine to Harry and, by extension, Hermione and Ron. Friday afternoon tea in his hut had become a regular fixture, mostly because Hagrid was terrible at keeping secrets and absolutely delighted to have an audience. It was during one of these visits, in the third week of October, that Harry guided the conversation toward the forbidden corridor. Gently. Casually. The way Hermione had taught him, ask adjacent questions, let people fill in the blanks themselves. Course, Dumbledore trusts me with all sorts, Hagrid was saying, chest puffed with pride as he poured tea into mugs the size of buckets. Trusted me to fetch the you-know-what from Gringotts Vault 713, didn't he? What's in Vault 713? Ron asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Can't say. Top secret. Hogwarts business. Between Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel, Hagrid's eyes went wide. I shouldn't ha' said that. Forget I said that. Don't go lookin' into it, none of ya. Nicholas Flamel, Hermione sent, and Harry could already feel her mental library cross-referencing the name. It took her approximately 4 seconds. The alchemist. Creator of the Philosopher's Stone, the only known substance that produces the elixir of life and turns base metals to gold. He's over 600 years old. The Philosopher's Stone. Harry sipped his tea, keeping his expression mildly interested while his mind raced. That's what's under the trapdoor. That's what Voldemort wants. Immortality, Hermione thought. A way to get his body back. Of course. Aloud, Harry said, don't worry, Hagrid. We won't look into it. Hagrid beamed, clearly believing him. Ron shot Harry a skeptical look that Harry returned with the barest flicker of a wink. Halloween arrived, and with it, the incident that cemented Harry and Hermione's reputation beyond the merely exceptional and into the realm of legend. The feast was in full swing, floating jack-o'-lanterns, mountains of food, the great hall alive with noise and candlelight, when Professor Quirrell burst through the doors, turban askew, face grey with terror. Troll! In the dungeons! Thought you ought to know, he crumpled to the floor in a dead faint. The hall erupted. Students screamed. Teachers surged to their feet. Dumbledore's voice cut through the chaos, prefects, lead your houses back to the dormitories, and suddenly everyone was moving, pushing, 100 children trying to squeeze through doors at once. Harry was on his feet before the screaming started. Through their mental map, he could see it, the troll. Not in the dungeons. Moving. Heading up, through the corridors, toward the first-floor bathroom, Hermione thought sharply. There are students still in there, I saw 2 Ravenclaw girls leave the feast early, they said they were going to, I see them. On the map, 2 small dots in the first-floor girls' lavatory, directly in the troll's path. Quirrell let it in as a distraction. He's heading for the 3rd floor right now, look. She looked. Quirrell's doubled signature, moving away from the unconscious performance he'd put on, heading straight for the forbidden corridor while every teacher rushed to the dungeons. The students first, Harry decided. Then Quirrell. Ron, Harry grabbed the redhead's arm as the crowd surged around them. Stay with the group. We'll catch up. What? Where are you? But they were already gone, moving against the tide of students with a speed and certainty that made people step aside without knowing why. The notice-me-not rolled off them like water, not invisible, just unimportant, beneath the notice of panicking children. They reached the first-floor corridor in under a minute. The troll was already there, 12 feet of grey-green muscle and stupidity, dragging a massive wooden club along the stone floor, leaving gouges in its wake. It hadn't found the bathroom yet, but it was close. Harry assessed in half a second. The thing was massive, magically resistant, phenomenally strong, and almost certainly too stupid to be reasoned with. He could feel its magic, dim and brutish, like the dull glow of an ember versus the bonfire of a human wizard. He didn't hesitate. The troll's club ripped from its grip and flew straight up, slamming into the vaulted ceiling so hard that stone cracked. The troll grunted in confusion, reaching for a weapon that was no longer there. Harry stepped into the corridor, wand raised, Hermione a step behind him, and the bond opened wide between them, power flowing, shared, amplified. "Hey," Harry said. The troll turned. Its tiny eyes found him. It roared, a sound like tearing metal, and charged. Harry flicked his wand. The floor beneath the troll's feet became ice, smooth, frictionless, and sudden. The creature's momentum carried it forward, but its feet had no purchase, and 12 feet of mountain troll went sliding past Harry like a grotesque hockey puck, arms windmilling, roaring in confusion. Hermione caught it. Not physically, magically. A wall of force materialized at the end of the corridor and the troll slammed into it hard enough to crack stone on the far side. Before it could recover, before it could shake off the daze, she pressed. The wall of force became a cage, invisible, unyielding, compressing from all sides until the troll was contained in a space just large enough to hold it. It raged inside its invisible prison. Beat against walls it couldn't see. Roared until the sound echoed through the corridor. "Now what?" Hermione asked aloud. She wasn't breathing hard. Neither was Harry. The amount of power holding that troll was significant by any normal measure, but split between them through the bond, it felt like holding a door closed against a breeze. "We put it to sleep," Harry said. He reached for the troll's dim consciousness, not with finesse, not with the subtle emotional influence they usually employed, but with a sledgehammer of magical will. "Sleep." The command hit the troll's mind like a wave, and the creature slumped, eyes rolling white, unconscious before it finished its last roar. The corridor went silent. Just the sound of their breathing and the distant thunder of students being herded to their dormitories. From behind the bathroom door came a small, terrified voice, Is it safe?" Hermione dissolved the force cage with a thought and opened the bathroom door. 2 first-year Ravenclaws stared up at her with enormous eyes, tear tracks on their faces. "It's safe," Hermione said gently. "The troll's asleep. Come on, we'll get you back to your common room." "How did you?" one of them started. "Quickly," Hermione said, ushering them into the corridor and past the snoring troll. "Your prefects will be looking for you." They ran. Harry watched them go, then turned his attention to the mental map. Quirrell was at the third-floor corridor. Had gotten past the dog somehow. Was descending through the trapdoor. Leave him, Hermione thought. He won't get the stone tonight. Dumbledore will realize what happened and be back before Quirrell gets through all the protections. "You're sure?" "Look." On the map, Dumbledore's powerful signature was already moving, not toward the dungeons, but toward the third floor. He'd figured it out. He's faster than Quirrell. It'll be fine. Harry exhaled. Let the tension drain. Hermione was right, tonight wasn't the night for that confrontation. Not with students still scattered through the castle, not without knowing exactly what protections lay between Quirrell and the stone. But soon, he thought. Soon, she agreed. The sound of running footsteps reached them, McGonagall, Snape, and Flitwick, rounding the corner at a sprint and skidding to a halt at the sight of 2 first-years standing calmly beside an unconscious mountain troll. McGonagall's face cycled through several emotions in rapid succession, shock, disbelief, relief, concern, and finally, settling like a mask, the severe expression of a head of house who needed an explanation. Potter. Granger. What in Merlin's name? There were students in the bathroom, Harry said. We saw the troll heading this way and realized it wasn't in the dungeons like Quirrell said. We handled it. You handled, McGonagall looked at the troll. Looked at the cracked stone where it had hit Hermione's force wall. Looked at the gouged floor. Looked at the ice still melting on the flagstones. Her mouth opened and closed several times. Snape was studying the scene with narrowed eyes, his expression unreadable but intense. Flitwick was examining the troll with his wand, making small sounds of astonishment. "Minerva," Flitwick said faintly, "this creature is under a sleep compulsion powerful enough to keep it unconscious for hours. That's an EWT-level work at minimum." "It's really not that complicated," Hermione offered. "Trolls have very simple neural, Miss Granger." McGonagall's voice was thin. "Are you telling me that 2 first-year students, in their first term, incapacitated a fully grown mountain troll?" "Yes," Harry and Hermione said together. Silence. 20 points to Gryffindor, McGonagall said. "Each." 4, she seemed to struggle. "For sheer daring and competence, and get back to your common room. Now." They went. Behind them, Harry heard Snape mutter something to McGonagall, too low to hear properly, but the tone was unmistakable. Suspicion. Concern. And beneath both, something that might have been fear. "They're scared of us," Hermione observed as they climbed the stairs toward Gryffindor Tower. Good, Harry thought. Then, more moderately, not of us. Of what we represent. 2 11-year-olds shouldn't be able to do what we just did. It doesn't fit their model of how magic works. We'll have to manage that. Fear in authority figures becomes hostility fast. Or respect, Harry countered. McGonagall gave us points. She recognizes strength even if it scares her. We keep being useful, keep being protective of other students, and she'll come around. And Snape? Snape's going to be a problem regardless. His issue isn't about our power, it's about my face. The fat lady swung open at the password and they stepped into the common room, where the entire house was huddled in anxious clusters. Ron spotted them immediately and crossed the room at a near run. "Where the bloody hell did you two go?" "I've been," he stopped. Looked at their faces. "What happened?" "We dealt with the troll," Harry said simply. "You," Ron's voice went high. "You dealt with the troll? The actual mountain troll? By yourselves?" "It's unconscious on the first floor," Hermione confirmed, sitting on the sofa with the casual air of someone reporting on a mildly interesting errand. "There were students in danger. We handled it." Ron stared. Then he sat down heavily in the nearest chair and said, with feeling, "Mental. You two are absolutely mental and I love it." Harry laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him by Ron's earnest absurdity, and the tension of the evening broke like a wave against shore. The troll incident spread through the school like wildfire. By breakfast the next morning, every student in Hogwarts knew that Harry Potter and Hermione Granger had taken down a mountain troll, alone, as first years, without a scratch. The story grew in the telling. By lunch, some versions had them fighting it with their bare hands, but even the accurate version was extraordinary enough to cement their status. The staff reacted differently. Flitwick was openly fascinated, seeking them out to ask technical questions about the sleep compulsion that Hermione answered with patient precision. Sprout gave them approving nods in the corridors. Snape's glares intensified to the point where Harry was mildly concerned the man might develop an eye strain injury. And Dumbledore said nothing. Did nothing. But his gaze followed them at meals with a new quality. Not the twinkling assessment of before. Something heavier. More uncertain. The look of a man whose plans were being outpaced by reality. The third-floor corridor remained sealed. Quirrell continued to teach, nervous and stuttering, as if nothing had happened. But through their map, Harry and Hermione watched his nightly prowling, his muttered conversations with the presence on the back of his skull, his growing agitation. "He's getting desperate," Hermione noted one November evening. They were in their practice room, Harry working through a series of advanced defensive sequences while Hermione researched the Philosopher's Stone. He failed on Halloween and now Dumbledore's tightened security. Quirrell's running out of opportunities. He'll make a move. Probably soon, before Christmas, I'd guess. The castle empties over the holidays. Fewer witnesses. Should we act first? Harry lowered his wand, considering. Through the bond, they weighed it together, the risks of waiting versus the risks of acting. Dumbledore's trap. Quirrell's desperation. Voldemort's cunning. Not yet, Harry decided. But we prepare. When he moves, we're ready. And we don't play Dumbledore's game, we don't sneak down there alone in the middle of the night like good little heroes being tested. We go on our terms, at full strength, and we end it. Agreed. Hermione set down her book and stood, stretching. In the meantime, there's something else we should work on. What? Your scar. She crossed to him, reached up, and pressed her fingers against his forehead, against the lightning bolt. The bond surged at the contact point, warm and powerful. The bond attacked it during that defense lesson. Whatever piece of Voldemort is in there, it's weaker than it was. I can feel the difference. I think if we're intentional about it, if we direct the bond's energy specifically at the scar, we can destroy it, Harry finished. I think we can. He took her hand from his forehead and held it. Met her eyes. Through the bond, gratitude flowed, and love, the deep kind, the kind that wasn't about romance or attraction but about souls that had chosen each other and would choose each other in every iteration of every universe. Then let's do it, he said. Not here. We need somewhere safe, somewhere we won't be disturbed. If the fragment fights back, our room. The one the castle gives us. Lock it down. Tell it we need privacy. Hermione looked around their practice space and thought, not in words, but in intent, at the castle itself, we need this room sealed. Protected. No one in or out until we say. The room responded. They felt it, doors locking, walls thickening, the ancient magic of Hogwarts itself wrapping around them like a fist closing. This room, for as long as they needed it, was theirs. Inviolable. Ready? Hermione asked. Ready. They sat facing each other on the cushioned floor, knees touching, hands clasped. The bond between them blazed, visible in their shared perception as a column of golden light connecting their centers, pulsing in time with their heartbeats. Hermione turned her attention to the scar. Through the bond, Harry let her in, fully, completely, holding nothing back. She moved through his mind like moving through a familiar house, down corridors she knew as well as her own, until she found it. The Horcrux. She didn't know the word yet, wouldn't learn it for years, but she could see it clearly through the lens of the bond. A dark mass, lodged behind the scar like a splinter of obsidian. A fragment of someone else's soul, parasitic and wrong, leeching and whispering and influencing in ways so subtle Harry had never noticed because he'd never known anything else. It was smaller than it had been. The bond had been working on it passively since September, eroding it, cutting off its connections to Harry's magical core, isolating it like a body walling off an infection. But it was still there. Still alive. Still him, Voldemort, or a piece of him, dreaming dark dreams inside Harry's head. I see it, Hermione thought. I can feel you seeing it. Harry's mental voice was steady. Trusting. Do it. Hermione gathered the bond's power, all of it, every ounce of their combined magical strength, and shaped it into something surgical. A blade of pure light, honed to an edge finer than thought. She directed it at the dark mass and cut. The fragment screamed. Not a sound, a sensation, a psychic shriek of outrage and terror as something ancient and evil felt itself dying. It thrashed, tried to fight, tried to sink deeper into Harry's mind, to find purchase, to survive, and found nothing to hold on to. Because Harry's mind wasn't a place where darkness could take root anymore. The bond had filled every space, reinforced every wall, turned his consciousness into a fortress of light and shared strength and love so fundamental that Tom Riddle's desperate fragment couldn't find a single crack to cling to. Hermione cut again. And again. Each stroke of the bond's power sliced away more of the dark mass, dissolving it into nothing, unmade by the very thing Voldemort had never understood and never would, the power of two souls chosen and bound in perfect trust. Harry gasped. His grip on Hermione's hands went white-knuckled. Pain, not physical but deep, the pain of something being ripped out that had been there so long it felt like part of him. Except it wasn't. It had never been him. And now it was gone. The last shred of the Horcrux dissolved. The scar on Harry's forehead flared hot, burning, almost unbearably, and then went cool. Dormant. Quiet in a way it had never been quiet before. Harry opened his eyes. The world was brighter. Clearer. Like he'd been wearing smudged glasses inside his mind for 11 years and someone had finally cleaned them. Colors were more vivid. The bond sang between them, unimpeded for the first time, no longer spending a fraction of its energy containing the parasite. "It's gone," he whispered. "It's gone," Hermione confirmed. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "Harry, how do you feel?" He breathed in. Out. Felt the space where the Horcrux had been, clean now, healed, the bond flowing through it unobstructed. "Free," he said. "I feel free." She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, scar to skin, and through the bond, they shared a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. The castle hummed around them, its ancient magic resonating with their triumph, and in the back of their shared awareness, their mental map showed the rest of Hogwarts going about its evening in blissful ignorance of what had just happened in a hidden room on the 7th floor. One piece of Voldemort was gone. For good. Unmade. And Harry Potter, for the first time in his life, was entirely, completely, only himself. The weeks between Halloween and Christmas passed swiftly. Harry's transformation after the Horcrux's destruction was subtle but profound. He slept better. Thought more clearly. The faint, constant headache he'd never consciously noticed, because it had been there since infancy, was gone, and its absence felt like a gift. His power grew too. The bond, freed from the constant drain of containing the Horcrux, ran hotter between them. They were stronger. Faster. More precise. Things that had required effort before became effortless, things that had been impossible before became merely challenging. They used the time wisely. While Quirrell planned and Dumbledore watched and the school gossiped about the extraordinary first years, Harry and Hermione trained. They mastered their map of the castle. They researched every protection on the 3rd floor corridor, the Devil's Snare, the enchanted keys, the giant chess set, the logic puzzle, the mirror. They knew it all. Ron, observant in his blunt way, noticed the shift. "You two are planning something," he said one December afternoon, the three of them huddled in the common room while snow fell beyond the windows. "You've got that look. The same look Fred and George get before a big prank, except scarier." "We're not planning a prank," Harry said. "I didn't say it was a prank. I said you're planning something." Ron looked between them. "Whatever it is, you need help." Harry and Hermione exchanged a glance. "Through the bond, he's asking to be included." "Do we?" "He's our friend. And he deserves to know what's happening in his own school. He could get hurt. He's tougher than he looks. And it's his choice." Harry turned back to Ron. "You know the 3rd floor corridor? The one Dumbledore warned us about? The one with the certain death? There's a 3-headed dog guarding a trapdoor. Below the trapdoor, there's a series of protections around an object called the Philosopher's Stone. It's an artifact that produces an elixir of immortality." Ron's mouth fell open. Professor Quirrell, or rather, the thing possessing Professor Quirrell, which we believe is Voldemort, Ron flinched at the name. "Wants to steal the stone to regain a physical body," Harry finished. "He'll make his move soon. We're going to stop him." Ron stared. Opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "Right," he said faintly. Yeah. Right. Just, Voldemort. In the castle. Possessing a teacher. And you two are going to, right? He swallowed hard. Then straightened in his chair. I'm in. Ron, you don't have to, I said I'm in. His jaw was set, his ears red, his freckles standing out against pale skin. But his eyes were steady. You're my best mates. If you're walking into something with bloody Voldemort on the other end, you're not doing it without me. Hermione smiled at him, warm, genuine, full of the affection she'd developed for this loyal, brave, ridiculous boy. Thank you, Ron. Yeah, well. He rubbed the back of his neck. Just, tell me the plan. All of it. And maybe teach me some of whatever it is you two do. Before we face an actual Dark Lord. We'll teach you what we can, Harry promised. The rest, just stay close to us. We won't let anything happen to you. Ron nodded. Then grinned, shaky but real. Mum's going to kill me. Only if she finds out, Hermione said. She always finds out, Ron said mournfully. She's got some kind of mum magic. Harry laughed. Through the bond, Hermione's warmth mingled with his, gratitude for Ron's loyalty, for his courage, for the simple fact of his friendship. They'd expected to walk into Hogwarts alone together. Finding someone who chose to stand with them, not because of prophecy or politics or power, but because they were his friends and he was that kind of person, was a gift they hadn't anticipated. He's going to be okay, Hermione sent. I know. We'll make sure of it. Outside, the snow fell over Hogwarts, blanketing the castle and its grounds in white silence. Inside, 3 first-years sat around a common room fire, planning for a confrontation with evil that was weeks away and approaching fast. They were ready. Chapter 4, What Lives in the Walls. Christmas morning dawned gray and cold over Hogwarts, the castle blanketed in snow so thick it muffled sound itself. Harry woke to the sight of presents at the foot of his bed, something that had never happened before in his life, and the warm pulse of Hermione's consciousness reaching for him from 200 miles away. She'd gone home for the holidays, unable to bear the thought of her parents alone at Christmas, but the distance meant nothing to the bond. She was as present as if she sat beside him. Happy Christmas, she sent, still half asleep, warm and content in her childhood bedroom. Happy Christmas. Harry sat up, staring at the pile of wrapped parcels. Ron was still snoring in the next bed, a lanky sprawl under twisted sheets. Hermione, I have presents. Of course you have presents. You have people who care about you now. Gentle amusement. Open them. He did. Mrs. Weasley had sent a hand-knitted jumper in emerald green and a box of homemade fudge. Hagrid had sent a carved wooden flute. Hermione's gift was a leather-bound journal, enchanted to be unreadable by anyone except Harry. She'd done the enchantments herself, and they were flawless. Ron had given him a box of chocolate frogs with a note that said, for your collection, you've probably got yourself already. And then there was the last package. Wrapped in plain brown paper, no card, no tag. Just a note in spidery, unfamiliar handwriting. Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. Harry unwrapped it and silvery fabric cascaded into his hands like liquid moonlight. He knew what it was immediately, felt its magic, ancient and extraordinary, a deathly halo pulsing with power that made his fingers tingle. An invisibility cloak, Hermione breathed through the bond, seeing through his eyes. Harry, that's not just any cloak. The magic in it, it's old. As old as the bond. Older, maybe. Who sent it? Harry turned the note over. No signature. But the handwriting, the careful, spidery loops, Dumbledore, they thought simultaneously. Why? Hermione's analytical mind was already spinning. Why give it to you now? He's had it for years, your father's been dead for a decade. Why Christmas of your first year? He wants me to use it. To go somewhere. Find something. Harry ran the cloak through his fingers, thinking. He's still trying to guide me. More subtly now, after our conversation, but still guiding. The third-floor corridor. Maybe. Or something else. Harry folded the cloak carefully and set it aside. He'd use it, it was his father's, and it was extraordinary, and he wasn't about to refuse a powerful magical tool out of spite, but he'd use it on his own terms, for his own purposes, not as a puppet following breadcrumbs. Ron stirred, yawned, saw Harry awake. "Prezzies," he announced with the enthusiasm of someone for whom Christmas meant food and family and uncomplicated joy. He launched into his own pile with abandon. Harry watched him, smiling, and let the morning be simple for a while. The castle was nearly empty over the holidays, most students home with their families, and Harry used the solitude to explore. The invisibility cloak was useful for this, not because he couldn't make himself unnoticeable without it, but because the cloak's magic was different from his own. It was absolute in a way his notice-me-not wasn't, a true invisibility, impenetrable even to magical detection. He could move through the castle completely unseen by anyone or anything. It was on one of these nighttime wanderings, 3 days after Christmas, that he found the mirror. An unused classroom on the first floor, dusty, cold, lit only by moonlight streaming through a tall window. And against the far wall, a mirror. Enormous. Gold-framed. Ornate. Its magic was unlike anything Harry had encountered, deep, complex, layered with enchantments so old they'd fossilized into the glass itself. He approached it cautiously. Read the inscription carved into the frame, Arist stra eru oit uber kafru oit anwosi. I show not your face but your heart's desire, Harry murmured, reading it backward. He looked into the mirror. And saw, himself. Just himself. Standing in the classroom, alone, exactly as he was. No. Not quite alone. As he watched, a figure appeared beside his reflection. Hermione. Her hand in his. And behind them, not family he'd never known, not parents he couldn't remember, not some idealized fantasy of what his life should have been, just more of what he already had. Ron, grinning. The Grangers, warm and present. Friends. People he'd chosen and who'd chosen him. His heart's desire was his reality. Harry stared at the mirror for a long time, letting that sink in. Then he smiled, a small, private smile, and turned away. What did you see? Hermione asked. She'd been watching through his eyes, quiet and respectful. Us. You and me. Ron. Your parents. What we have now. A long pause. Then, softly, oh, Harry. I know. He pulled the cloak around himself and left the classroom. I used to think, when I was little, in the cupboard, that if I could have anything, it would be my parents. A family. But I have a family now. You. The Grangers. Ron. I'm not missing anything anymore. You know, Hermione thought carefully, most people would see the mirror and be trapped by it. Wanting what they can't have. Coming back night after night. Maybe that's what Dumbledore intended. Leaving it where a curious boy with an invisibility cloak might find it. Harry descended a staircase, moving silently through the sleeping castle. Another test. Another breadcrumb. And you passed it without trying. Because you're not the broken, desperate child he expected. Because of you, Harry corrected. Because 3 years ago, you heard me in the dark. Hermione returned after New Year's, stepping off the Hogwarts Express with her trunk and a bag of books she'd purchased over the holidays. Harry was waiting on the platform with Ron, and the moment she came into physical proximity, the bond sang between them like a plucked string, brighter, louder, more vivid than the background hum of long-distance connection. She hugged him, quick, fierce, familiar, and pulled back grinning. I found something over the break, she said without preamble, because between them there was no need for pleasantries or transition. In my parents' attic. More books. Old ones. Different from the ones we found at the car boot sale but written by the same hand. What's in them? Ron asked, falling into step beside them as they headed for the carriages. History. Specifically, the history of Hogwarts's founding, but not the sanitized version in our textbook. The real one. Hermione's eyes were bright with the particular fever of discovery. The founders didn't just build a school. They built a nexus. A focal point for magical energy. The castle isn't just enchanted, it's alive, Harry. Properly alive. A magical intelligence, ancient and aware, and it was designed to grow. To learn. To protect its students. And it was built by a bonded pair, Harry added through the bond. Exactly. Helga Hufflepuff and Aldrich, her soul-bonded partner, designed the castle's consciousness. They wove their bond into its foundations. That's why it responds to us, we're the same kind of magic it was born from. We're basically speaking its native language. Can you two do that thing where you explain out loud? Ron said plaintively from beside them. You've gone quiet and you've got that look. Sorry, Harry said. Hermione found out the castle is alive and was built by people like us. It's why it helps us. Ron blinked. The castle is alive. In a magical sense, yes. Of course it is, Ron muttered. Why would anything about you two be normal? That night, they tested it. The room of requirement, their practice space on the 7th floor, responded to intent. They'd known that. But they'd been treating it like a vending machine, think about what you need, get a room that provides it. Surface level. Impersonal. Now Hermione had a different theory. It's not just responding to our needs, she said, pacing the room while Harry sat cross-legged on the floor and Ron sprawled in a conjured armchair, watching with fascination. It's responding to us. To the bond specifically. Watch. She stopped pacing. Closed her eyes. And instead of thinking about what she needed from the room, she reached out with the bond, not toward Harry, but toward the castle itself. The same way she'd reached toward Harry in the dark 3 years ago. An open hand. A willing connection. The room responded. Not with furniture or books or training equipment. With awareness. A presence, vast, ancient, patient, rising to meet Hermione's touch like a sleeping giant opening one eye. Harry felt it through the bond, felt the castle recognize them, remember them, not as individuals it had met before but as a type, a frequency it hadn't detected in 1,000 years. The walls shimmered. The room expanded, not in size but in depth, revealing layers that hadn't been visible before. Beneath the stone floor, channels of golden light became visible, running like veins through the castle's structure. The ceiling dissolved into transparency, showing the magic flowing through the floors above, rivers of enchantment, networks of power, the entire castle illuminated from within like a body showing its circulatory system. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. It's showing us itself, Harry said. He stood, looking up at the revealed architecture of Hogwarts's magic. Its real self. The structure beneath the structure. Welcome, something communicated. Not in words, in impression. In feeling. The castle couldn't speak, exactly, it wasn't that kind of intelligence, but it could convey. And what it conveyed was recognition. Belonging. Home. We see you, Hermione thought back. We understand what you are. Finally. The impression was unmistakable. Gratitude. Relief. 1,000 years of dormant awareness, waiting for the right magical frequency to wake it, and here they were. Can it help us? Ron asked, standing now, eyes wide as he stared at the golden veins of light. Against, you know. Quirrell. Harry felt the castle's response before he could translate it. A surge of protective fury, ancient, powerful, vast. The castle knew about Quirrell. Knew about the parasite he carried. Had been containing it for months, keeping Voldemort's influence from spreading through the corridors, limiting the corruption to Quirrell's immediate vicinity. It already is helping, Harry said. It's been fighting Voldemort this whole time. Holding him in check. And now it has us, Hermione murmured. Too bonded. Like the people who built it. It's like a computer that's been running on backup power finally getting plugged back into the grid. The castle hummed. Beneath their feet, the golden veins pulsed brighter. How long has it been? Hermione asked the presence. Long impression of years, centuries, stretching like an ocean. Long and alone. Others came. Spoke to me in pieces. The old one, an image of Dumbledore, clear as a photograph, touches my edges. Understands fragments. But cannot hear. Not truly. Not like this. We hear you, Harry confirmed. And we're not going anywhere. Another pulse of warmth. Of gratitude so immense it was almost physical, pressing against them like a wave of benevolent force. Ron looked between Harry and Hermione, mouth slightly open. You're having a conversation with the castle, aren't you? Yes, Hermione said. It's been waiting a very long time for someone who could hear it properly. Right. Ron sat back down. Paused. Is it friendly? The room produced a cup of hot chocolate directly in front of Ron. Perfectly made, with whipped cream and marshmallows. I'll take that as a yes, Ron said, and drank. The castle's cooperation changed everything. In the weeks that followed, Harry and Hermione developed a relationship with Hogwarts itself that went beyond anything the current inhabitants of the school would have believed possible. The castle showed them its secrets, hidden passages older than the ones Fred and George knew, rooms that hadn't been accessed in centuries, stores of magical knowledge that predated the library. It also showed them the third-floor corridor. In detail. From the inside. The protections weren't just puzzles, they were part of the castle's immune system, designed to contain whatever was placed beneath them. The stone itself sat in a pocket of warped space at the bottom, accessible only through the Mirror of Erist, which Dumbledore had moved there after Harry's nighttime discovery. The mirror was the final lock, you could only retrieve the stone if you wanted to have it but not use it. Clever, Harry acknowledged. But not good enough. Voldemort's not stupid, he'll find a workaround eventually. Or he'll force someone else to retrieve it for him, Hermione added. Someone who genuinely doesn't want to use it. A student, maybe. An innocent. The thought made Harry's jaw clench. We end this before that can happen, he decided. No more waiting. We go this weekend. Not this weekend. Hermione's thought was firm but not argumentative. We need 2 more days. I want to prepare something specific, a containment for whatever's attached to Quirrell. If we just beat him, Voldemort's spirit will flee. He'll find another host, try again somewhere else. We need to trap him. Can we do that? I think so. The castle is helping me design it. It's like, remember the Bond's immune response? When it attacked the Horcrux. We can create something similar. A magical cage that attacks dark soul fragments. Combine our power with the castle's own defenses. A trap within a trap, Harry said slowly. Dumbledore baited the stone to catch Quirrell. We bait the confrontation to catch Voldemort. Exactly. He felt her smile, sharp, triumphant, the expression of a mind finding its solution. Give me 2 days. Those 2 days were among the most intensive of their lives. Hermione worked with the castle, communicating through the bond, receiving impressions and instructions, translating ancient magical theory into practical application. The containment she designed was elegant, a ward scheme that would activate around Quirrell the moment his parasite was exposed, drawing on both the bond's power and the castle's own reserves to create an inescapable prison for the disembodied spirit. Harry trained. Not new techniques, they were past that, but integration. Making sure his reflexes were sharp, his power responsive, his connection with Hermione in the castle seamless. He practiced fighting while channeling through the bond, splitting his attention between offense and defense, operating on multiple layers simultaneously. Ron practiced too, in his own way. He couldn't do what Harry and Hermione did, no one could, but he had his own strengths. He was a tactical thinker, especially under pressure. His chess mind saw patterns and gambits that even Hermione's pure intellect sometimes missed. And he was loyal to a fault, loyal enough to walk into danger beside two people who could probably handle it alone, because friendship wasn't about necessity. It was about choice. "You don't have to come," Harry told him the night before. They were in the common room, late, the fire burning low. "We can handle Quirrell." "I know you can. That's not why I'm coming." Ron's jaw was set, his freckled face determined. "You too, you're not alone in this. You've got each other, yeah, but you've got me too. And I want to," he struggled, flushed, pushed through. "I want to matter. Not because of what I can do, I know I can't do what you do, but because I chose to be there." Hermione reached across the sofa and squeezed his hand. "You matter, Ron. You've always mattered." "Yeah, well." He cleared his throat. "Right. So. Tomorrow night?" "Tomorrow night," Harry confirmed. They didn't sneak. That was the part that would confuse people later, when the story inevitably got out. They didn't creep out of bed at midnight, didn't tiptoe past sleeping portraits, didn't use the invisibility cloak to slip past authority. Harry walked up to Professor McGonagall after dinner on Saturday and said, "Professor, we're going to the third-floor corridor tonight to deal with the Quirrell situation. You should probably know." McGonagall's teacup froze halfway to her lips. "I beg your pardon. Professor Quirrell is possessed by Voldemort." He said it plainly, without drama. "The spirit is living on the back of his head, under the turban. Voldemort wants the Philosopher's Stone that Dumbledore is keeping under the trapdoor. Quirrell's been trying to steal it all year. Tonight, we're going to stop him." The teacup descended to its saucer with a click. McGonagall's face had gone through several colors and was currently settling on a shade of white that didn't suit her. "Mr. Potter, that is an extraordinary claim. It's not a claim. It's a fact. Hermione and I can sense the possession, we've been tracking it since September. Dumbledore knows too, he set the protections as a trap. But the trap isn't working. Quirrell's getting more desperate, and soon he'll do something that puts students at risk. We're ending it tonight. You are 11 years old, and we took down a mountain troll in October without breaking a sweat," Harry said gently. "Professor, we're not asking permission. We're informing you as a courtesy. You can come, if you want. But we're going regardless." McGonagall stared at him. Her lips were pressed so thin they'd nearly vanished. Behind her spectacles, her eyes were sharp with conflicting impulses, outrage at a student's presumption warring with the memory of that troll, of every impossible thing she'd seen them do this year. "I am going to the headmaster," she said finally. "That's fine. Tell him we'll be at the corridor at 9 o'clock. He's welcome to join us or observe. But this ends tonight." She stood, rigid as a steel rod, and swept from the room without another word. "Think she'll try to stop us?" Ron asked. He'd been at the next table, close enough to hear, pale but resolute. "No," Hermione thought. "She'll tell Dumbledore, and Dumbledore will be curious enough to let it play out. He's been waiting to see what we do about Quirrell, this just moves up his timeline. And if he does try to stop us?" Ron pressed. Harry and Hermione exchanged a glance. Through the bond, they shared a thought that didn't need words: nobody stops us. Nobody can. "He won't," Harry said aloud. "Come on. We've got an hour to prepare." At 9 o'clock, Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood before the door to the third-floor corridor. They were not alone. Dumbledore was there, in star-spangled robes, his expression a complex mixture of concern and fascination. McGonagall flanked him, wand drawn, looking like she'd swallowed something unpleasant. Snape lurked in the shadows behind them, dark eyes glittering with an emotion Harry couldn't parse, hostility, certainly, but threaded through with something else. Something almost protective. "Harry," Dumbledore began. "We're going in," Harry said. "You can follow at a distance. But Hermione and I take point. The protections, we know what they are. All of them. We have a plan." Dumbledore studied him. Those blue eyes, sharp, penetrating, stripped of their habitual twinkle, searched Harry's face for something. Uncertainty, perhaps. Bravado. The recklessness of youth. They found none of those things. Harry looked back at the most powerful wizard in Britain with the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly what he was capable of and exactly what he intended to do. "Very well," Dumbledore said quietly. "Lead on." Harry opened the door. Fluffy, 3 massive heads, each the size of a small car, lurched awake, snarling. 6 eyes fixed on them. 3 mouths opened, revealing teeth like ivory daggers. Harry didn't slow down. He reached for the beast's mind, simple, guarding, territorial, and pushed. Sleep. Not the brutal sledgehammer he'd used on the troll, but firm, undeniable. The bond amplified it. Hermione's power wove through his, and the command hit Fluffy like a warm blanket, smothering its aggression, dragging its 3 massive heads downward. The dog collapsed. All 3 heads hit the floor with successive thuds. Snoring filled the room in seconds. Behind them, Harry heard Snape's sharp intake of breath. McGonagall's silence was louder. "Trapdoors here," Harry said, pulling back the massive paw that covered it. The wooden door swung open on dark space below. He looked down, the bond's awareness reaching ahead, mapping what lay beneath. Devil's snare at the bottom. Hermione. She stepped to the edge and dropped. Simply dropped, no hesitation, no rope, no cushioning charm. She fell 20 feet into darkness and the devil's snare surged up to catch her, thick tendrils wrapping around her limbs. Fire bloomed. Not from a wand. From Hermione herself, bright blue-white flames that erupted from her skin, harmless to her, devastating to the plant. The devil's snare recoiled, shriveling, and she landed on clear stone below. "Clear," her voice echoed up. "Come on." Ron jumped next. Harry caught him with telekinesis 6 inches from the ground, depositing him gently on his feet. "Thanks," Ron managed. "Hate falling." Harry dropped last, landing in a crouch. Behind them, he heard Dumbledore and the professors descending more decorously, Dumbledore floating, McGonagall and Snape using arresto momentum. The next chamber held the enchanted keys, hundreds of them, glittering and winged, swooping through the air in patterns of increasing complexity. In the center, a broomstick hovered. Harry looked at the keys. Looked at the door they were meant to unlock. He pointed his wand at the lock and said, "Open." Not Alohomora. Not any standard charm. Just his will, channeled through holly and phoenix feather, backed by the power of the bond and 3 years of learning that intention mattered more than incantation. The lock exploded. The door swung wide. The keys swirled in confused patterns, their purpose negated. Snape made a sound behind him. Harry didn't turn to look. The chess room was next, giant stone pieces, a board stretching the width of the chamber. The white pieces turned as they entered, blank faces expectant, waiting for challengers. Ron stepped forward. "This one's mine," he said, and his voice was steady for the first time all evening. "Ron," Hermione started. "I know. You could probably just blast through them. But this is what I'm here for, yeah. Let me do this." Harry felt Hermione's hesitation through the bond. He touched her arm. Let him. He needs this. She nodded. Ron studied the board for 30 seconds. His eyes moved in patterns Harry recognized from watching him play in the common room, calculating, 6 moves ahead, seeing the whole picture at once. Right, Ron said. This won't take long. He called out moves, directing them like pieces on his board at home. Knight to h3. Bishop to c5. Queen to f7. The white pieces responded, making their countermoves, and Ron answered each one with a speed and certainty that drew a quiet sound of respect from Dumbledore behind them. It took 4 minutes. 4 minutes and 17 moves, and Ron called checkmate as the white king threw down its crown and the pieces dragged themselves aside. Ron turned around, grinning, ears red, vibrating with pride. Brilliant, Harry told him. And meant it. Bloody brilliant, Ron corrected. Past the chessboard, the troll room. Already dealt with, the troll was unconscious, presumably put down by the protections themselves. They stepped over it without pause. Then the logic puzzle, Snape's contribution, a table of potions and a riddle. Hermione solved it in the time it took to read it twice, selected the correct bottle, and they moved on. And then, the final chamber. The mirror of Eriste stood in the center of a round room. And before it, his back to them, turban slightly askew, Quirrell. He turned as they entered. His face was drawn, sweating, eyes darting. But his wand was out and his stance was that of a man cornered. Behind the nervousness, something else looked out through his eyes, something cold and calculating and ancient. Potter, Quirrell said. His stutter was gone. His voice was layered, his own and something deeper beneath it, resonant and terrible. I wondered when you'd come. No you didn't, Harry said, walking into the room without hesitation, Hermione at his side, Ron a step behind. You've been trying to get down here for months and you couldn't do it. We made it in 10 minutes. The difference between us should be obvious. Quirrell's face twisted. The cold presence behind his eyes surged forward, pushing Quirrell's personality aside like a wave swallowing a sandcastle. So, said the voice of Lord Voldemort through Quirrell's mouth. The boy who lived. Come to die. Come to end this, Harry corrected. Behind him, he felt Dumbledore and the professors enter the chamber. Felt Dumbledore's power flare, the old wizard preparing to intervene. But Harry held up a hand without looking back. We've got this, Professor. Dumbledore stopped. Harry couldn't see his face, but he felt the old man's magic, turbulent, conflicted, powerful, hesitate and hold. Quirrell's body shifted. His hands went to his turban, unwinding it with jerky, mechanical movements. The cloth fell away, revealing the back of his head, and the face. Chalk white. Flat-nosed, with slits for nostrils. Red eyes, burning like coals in a dead hearth. Voldemort's face, pressed into Quirrell's skull like a parasite, a grotesque second countenance that locked eyes with Harry and smiled. Remarkable, Voldemort said. The lips moved wrongly on the back of Quirrell's head, too wide, too thin. I had hoped to take the stone quietly. But you have grown beyond what I expected, Harry Potter. You don't know anything about what I've grown into, Harry said. Oh, but I do. I feel it. Something powerful. Something old. Those red eyes shifted to Hermione. And you. The source of it. The other half. How fascinating. The smile widened. A soul bond. I thought them extinct. Tell me, girl, does it hurt, being tethered to a marked child? Does it burn? Hermione stepped forward, shoulder to shoulder with Harry. Her wand was in her hand but she didn't raise it. Didn't need to. It doesn't burn, she said. It sings. And it's about to be the last thing you ever hear. Now. Harry sent. Now. The bond opened. Not gradually, Not like a door opening or a river flowing, but like a dam breaking. Everything they had, everything they were, surging between them and outward. Power, raw, immense, golden white and terrible in its beauty, filled the chamber like sunrise filling a valley. Simultaneously, the ward scheme activated. Hermione's containment design, woven into the castle's own defenses over the past 2 days, snapped into existence around Quirrell like a cage of light. Bars of golden energy materialized from floor to ceiling, humming with the bond's frequency, reinforced by the castle's ancient power. Quirrell screamed. Or Voldemort did, it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The possessed man threw himself against the bars and recoiled, howling. Dark magic erupted from him in waves, killing curses, blasting hexes, raw destructive force, but the cage held. Every dark spell hit the golden bars and dissolved, unmade by the same power that had destroyed the Horcrux in Harry's scar. What is this? Voldemort's voice was no longer smooth. It was panicked. Hi. The voice of something that had just realized it was prey, not predator. This is what you never understood, Harry said. He stepped closer to the cage, close enough to see the red eyes wild with fear, close enough that his voice needed no force to carry. This is what the prophecy meant. Power you don't know. Power you can't know, because you've spent your whole existence tearing your soul apart while we've spent ours putting ourselves together. Hermione was beside him. Their hands weren't touching, didn't need to be, but the bond between them was visible now, blazing gold in the air like a living thing, and everywhere its light touched Voldemort's dark magic, that darkness crumbled to nothing. No, Voldemort was trying to separate from Quirrell. Harry could see it happening, the parasitic spirit attempting to rip free of its host, to flee, to survive the way it always did. Running from death. The only thing it had ever been good at. The cage wouldn't let him. The golden bars tightened. Compressed. The ward scheme Hermione had designed was specifically for this, for catching a fleeing spirit, for containing a soul fragment. It drew on the same principles as the bond's immune response, identifying dark soul magic and destroying it. Voldemort's spirit ripped free from Quirrell with a sound like tearing silk. The teacher's body collapsed, unconscious, alive, but empty of the presence that had been riding it. The dark spirit hung in the air within the cage, a writhing mass of shadow and rage, screaming without a mouth, thrashing against bars it couldn't break. The cage contracted further. The golden light intensified. And everywhere it touched the dark spirit, pieces dissolved, unmade, returned to nothing, erased from existence. Potter. The scream was barely coherent now. I will return, I will always. No, Harry said. You won't. He reached for Hermione. She reached back. The bond blazed, brighter than it had ever blazed, a supernova of combined power channeled through the ward scheme, through the castle's foundations, focused to a point, the spirit of Lord Voldemort dissolved. Not banished. Not scattered. Dissolved. Every fragment of dark magic, every piece of torn soul that had been clinging to existence through parasitism and possession, was unmade by the combined force of the bond and the castle's ancient defenses. The golden light faded. The cage dissolved, its purpose served. The chamber was quiet. Quirrell lay on the floor, unconscious but breathing. The mirror of Eriste stood unmoved, reflecting nothing but the room and its occupants. And in the space where Voldemort's spirit had been, nothing. Clean air. Silence. Harry exhaled. Beside him, Hermione swayed slightly, the first sign of effort either of them had shown, and he caught her arm, steadying her, their bond settling from its blazing peak back to its normal warm hum. Is he gone? She asked. Harry reached out with his senses. Searched the room, the castle, the awareness of the building around them. Searched for any trace of that cold, double presence. Nothing. Nowhere. He's gone. Behind them, absolute silence. Then, Merlin's beard, Ron whispered. Harry turned. The professors stood in a cluster at the chamber's entrance. Ron was nearest, pale-faced, wide-eyed, looking like he'd just witnessed the birth of a star. McGonagall had one hand pressed to her mouth. Snape was still as stone, dark eyes reflecting the fading golden light, his expression stripped bare in a way that made him look, for one unguarded moment, like a man who'd just been freed from something. And Dumbledore. Dumbledore stood with his wand half raised and his mouth slightly open. He looked old. Not in the twinkly grandfather way, not in the wise mentor way, but genuinely old. Shocked. Displaced. A man watching the world shift beneath his feet. Harry, he said. His voice cracked on the word. What did you? We destroyed him, Harry said simply. The spirit. The soul fragment. All of it. He's gone, Professor. For real this time. Dumbledore's wand lowered slowly. His hand was trembling. That should not be possible. The Horcruxes, he made anchors, multiple. Harry felt Hermione's sharp attention seize on the word. Horcruxes. That's what the scar fragment was. That's what he used to survive death. And we already destroyed one, Harry thought. The one in my scar. Aloud, how many did he make? Dumbledore blinked. Refocused. I suspected several. His diary. His ring. His locket, his cup, his diadem. And your scar, already dealt with, Harry said. Months ago. The bond destroyed it. The, what? Dumbledore's voice was faint. The soul bond between us destroyed the Horcrux in my scar. Tonight we destroyed the piece that was riding Quirrell. If there are others, objects, you said, we can find them. Destroy them the same way. Dumbledore stared at him. Then at Hermione. Then at the space between them where the bond still shimmered faintly, barely visible, like heat haze in summer air. A soul bond, he whispered. A true, deep soul bond. I didn't, he stopped. Removed his spectacles. Pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. When he looked up, his expression was raw. Vulnerable in a way the most powerful wizard in Britain probably hadn't been in decades. I have spent 10 years, he said, planning for how to guide a young orphan through an impossible destiny. Building protections. Laying groundwork. Preparing for a war that might take another decade to fight. His voice was barely above a whisper. And you've rendered all of it unnecessary in a single evening. Not unnecessary, Hermione said. Her voice was gentle but firm. The protections around the stone held Quirrell at bay for months. Your trap worked, just not the way you expected. And the information about Horcruxes, we need that. We'll need your help to find and destroy the rest. Dumbledore let out a long breath. Then, slowly, he laughed. Not his usual amused chuckle, something deeper. Almost broken. Almost relieved. Miss Granger. You are, both of you are, he shook his head. I have lived a very long time and seen a great many extraordinary things. Nothing in my experience prepared me for you two. Get used to it, Ron said from behind them, and his voice held a fierce pride that made Harry's chest warm. They're only getting started. The aftermath was quiet, in its way. Quirrell was taken to the hospital wing. He'd survive, the possession had damaged him, but not irreparably, and without Voldemort's spirit sustaining itself through his life force, his body could begin to heal. He'd face questions, certainly. Legal consequences, probably. But he was a victim as much as a perpetrator, and even Snape, who had reason to be uncharitable, acknowledged that. The stone was returned to Nicholas Flamel within the week. Dumbledore seemed to feel its presence in the castle was no longer necessary, or perhaps no longer wise, given what the evening had revealed about the stakes. The school was not told the full truth. As far as the student body knew, there had been a security incident related to the forbidden corridor that had been resolved by the staff. Harry didn't mind the cover story. What mattered wasn't credit or recognition, it was results. What mattered was that 2 of Voldemort's Horcruxes were destroyed, and they knew what the others were. His diary, his ring, his locket, his cup, his diadem, Hermione recited, lying on the common room sofa 3 days after the confrontation, staring at the ceiling. It was late, Ron had gone to bed an hour ago, and the fire had burned to embers. 5 objects. We need to find them and destroy them. Then he's truly gone. Completely. We've got time, Harry said from the armchair beside her. He doesn't have a body anymore. He doesn't have a spirit form. Whatever's left of him is anchored in those objects, dormant, passive. We can hunt them down methodically. This summer, Hermione said. We start this summer. The diary, Dumbledore said he suspected Lucius Malfoy might have it. Of course he does. Harry's lip curled. Draco's charming father. The ring is somewhere connected to Voldemort's family. The locket, cup, and diadem, we'll need to research. The castle might be able to help with the diadem, if it's hidden here. It is. Harry closed his eyes, consulting their mental map of the castle. There, in a room on the 7th floor, a different configuration of their room of requirement, stuffed with centuries of hidden objects. And among them, a signature of dark magic that pulsed with the same sickly frequency as the Horcrux he'd carried in his scar. 7th floor. Room of hidden things. I can feel it. Hermione sat up sharply. Now. Tomorrow. He smiled at her. It's not going anywhere. And we've earned 1 night of rest. She huffed, impatient, eager, always wanting to push forward, but conceded the point. Through the bond, her restless energy gradually mellowed into something warmer. Softer. Harry. Yeah. We did something impossible tonight. We did. How many more impossible things do you think we'll do? He opened his eyes and looked at her, this girl, this brilliant, fierce, extraordinary girl who had heard him in the dark when he was 8 years old and scared and alone, who had reached back without hesitation, who had built herself into the foundation of his existence so thoroughly that he couldn't imagine a version of himself without her. As many as it takes, he said. As many as we want. There's no limit on what we can do, Hermione. There never was. She smiled. Through the bond, he felt her settle, not just physically but fundamentally. The certainty between them solid as bedrock. Whatever came next, the remaining Horcruxes, the wizarding world's reaction to what they were, the future stretching out before them vast and uncharted, they'd face it together. They always would. The fire popped. The castle hummed around them, warm and welcoming and awake. And in the quiet of the Gryffindor common room, 2 11-year-olds who carried between them a power older than civilization itself sat in comfortable silence and planned the destruction of a Dark Lord's immortality. Just another Thursday. Chapter 5, The door at the end. The diadem was easier than it should have been. Harry and Hermione went the next morning, Saturday, the castle quiet with weekend lethargy, students sleeping in or drifting toward the great hall for late breakfast. They walked to the 7th floor, past the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, and Harry thought at the wall, "Show me where things are hidden." The door appeared. Different from their practice room, larger, rougher, a heavy oak thing with iron fittings that looked centuries old. Harry pushed it open and they stepped into chaos. The room of hidden things was a labyrinth of lost objects stretching in every direction, piled to a cathedral ceiling. Furniture, books, bottles, broken brooms, stuffed animals, tarnished jewelry, rusted cauldrons, the detritus of 1,000 years of students hiding things they shouldn't have had. It was a graveyard of secrets, and somewhere in its depths, one particular secret pulsed with dark magic. They didn't need to search. The bond could feel it, a wrongness in the air, a frequency that set their teeth on edge, pulling them forward through the maze of objects with the inevitability of gravity. 3 turns left, 1 right, past a cabinet that buzzed with unstable enchantment, over a pile of moth-eaten robes, and, there. On a dusty bust of an old wizard, resting like it had been placed there carelessly, a tarnished silver diadem, set with a pale blue stone. Beautiful, in a corroded way. And saturated with the same soul-sickness Harry had carried in his scar for 11 years. Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, Hermione breathed. He hid a piece of his soul in a founder's artifact. The arrogance, Harry reached for it, not with his hands. With the bond. The same surgical precision Hermione had used on his scar, the same golden light, the same focused intent. You don't belong here. You are not welcome. Be unmade. The diadem screamed. A thin, reedy sound, the trapped fragment raging against its destruction, thrashing in its metal prison. Dark magic erupted from the stone, shadows, whispers, the echo of Tom Riddle's voice hissing threats and promises. Harry felt it try to influence him, tried to find cracks, tried to offer power, tried to threaten. It found nothing. There were no cracks. The bond was seamless. Hermione added her strength. The golden light intensified, blazing around the diadem like a forge fire, burning away the darkness layer by layer. The screaming peaked, cracked, shattered into silence. The diadem clattered to the floor. Tarnished but clean, just metal now, just an artifact, its dark passenger annihilated. Harry picked it up. The blue stone was dim, its inner light gone, whatever enchantment Ravenclaw had originally placed on it was damaged, perhaps destroyed by years of hosting a Horcrux. But the diadem itself was intact. 3 down, he said. 4 to go, Hermione replied. Then corrected herself, 3 to go. The spirit we destroyed was effectively another piece, the main fragment, the one that was actively operating as Voldemort. So. 3 objects left. The diary. The ring. The locket or the cup. Harry turned the diadem over in his hands, considering. Dumbledore said the diary might be with Lucius Malfoy. The ring is connected to Voldemort's family. We need locations. We need Dumbledore's research, Hermione thought pragmatically. He's been tracking these for years. Probably decades. We should meet with him, properly, collaboratively. Not as student and headmaster. As allies. After what he saw Thursday night, I think he's ready for that conversation. They left the room of hidden things, the clean diadem in Harry's bag, and headed for the headmaster's office. The gargoyle leapt aside before they reached it, the castle anticipating them, or perhaps Dumbledore had left standing instructions. The office was warm, the phoenix fox preening on his perch, the silver instruments whirring their eternal patterns. Dumbledore stood at his window, looking out over the grounds, and turned when they entered. He looked different. Smaller, somehow, not physically, but in presence. Like a man who'd been carrying a weight for so long he'd forgotten it wasn't part of him, and now that someone had taken it, he didn't quite know how to stand. Harry. Miss Granger. He gestured to the chairs before his desk. Please, sit. I've been expecting you. We destroyed the diadem this morning, Harry said without preamble, setting the cleaned artifact on Dumbledore's desk. That's 3 Horcruxes gone. We need your help with the rest. Dumbledore looked at the diadem. Touched it gently, reverently, the historian in him recognizing a founder's artifact, the strategist recognizing the significance of its cleansing. 3, he murmured. In a matter of months, you've accomplished what I feared might take a decade. We're motivated, Hermione said. Professor, we need everything you know about the remaining Horcruxes. Locations. Protections. History. We can destroy them, but we need to find them first. Dumbledore sat behind his desk. Steepled his fingers. And for the first time since Harry had met him, he spoke without reservation or strategy, just one person sharing information with another, openly, completely. The diary, he began. Tom Riddle's diary from his time at Hogwarts. I believe it's in the possession of Lucius Malfoy, given to him for safekeeping before Voldemort's fall. My sources within the pure-blood circle suggest Malfoy keeps it in his manor, though I cannot be certain of its exact location within. We can get into Malfoy Manor, Harry said. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose fractionally, but he didn't argue. The ring belonged to Voldemort's maternal grandfather, Marvolo Gaunt. It should be hidden in the ruins of the Gaunt family home in Little Hangleton. I've located the village but not yet attempted retrieval. I suspected the ring would be heavily cursed. Cursed how? I don't know specifically. Voldemort was inventive with his protections. Dumbledore paused. The ring itself holds a stone of some significance, but that is perhaps a conversation for another time. Harry filed that away. The old man was still holding some cards close. The locket, Dumbledore continued, is Salazar Slytherin's. I traced it to a cave on the coast, a place Voldemort visited as a child, significant in his personal mythology. I was planning an expedition this summer to retrieve it. We'll go with you, Hermione said. Not a question. Dumbledore looked at her. At Harry. At the space between them. Yes, he said slowly. I believe you should. And the cup? Harry asked. Helga Hufflepuff's cup. I believe it's in a vault at Gringotts, Bellatrix Lestrange's vault, specifically. That will be, considerably more challenging to access. Goblins respect power, Harry said. And contracts. We'll find a way. Dumbledore leaned back in his chair. The morning light caught his spectacles, his silver beard, the deep lines around his eyes. He looked tired. Relieved. Uncertain. A dozen things at once. I have spent decades preparing for a war, he said quietly. Building an order. Cultivating alliances. Positioning pieces. And now, 2 children walk into my school and in 9 months accomplish what I couldn't in 14 years. We're not ordinary children, Hermione said. No. You are very much not. He smiled, small, genuine, self-deprecating. I am an old man who has spent too long believing he must carry every burden alone. It is, humbling, to discover that the burden was never mine to carry. You still have a role, Harry said. Information. Resources. Political cover. We can destroy Horcruxes, but we can't navigate the Ministry or the Pureblood families or the Wisengamot. That's your arena. A partnership, then. Rather than a puppeteer and his strings. Exactly. Dumbledore nodded slowly. I think I can manage that. He paused. Harry, there are things I should tell you. About your parents. About the Order of the Phoenix. About the political landscape you're inheriting whether you want to or not. Would you both like to know? Yes, Harry and Hermione said together. And so Dumbledore talked. For 3 hours, he talked, about the First War, the Order, James and Lily and the people who'd fought beside them. About Sirius Black in Azkaban, and his suspicion, never proven, that the man might be innocent. About Remus Lupin in exile. About the Death Eaters who'd walked free and the ones who'd turned and the ones who'd simply pretended the war never happened. Harry absorbed it all. Filed it. Cross-referenced it with what they already knew and what the castle had shown them and what the old books had taught them. A picture formed, not just of Voldemort's defeat, but of the world he'd left behind. A world fractured and afraid and desperately pretending everything was fine. A world that needed changing. Not yet, Hermione thought, sensing the direction of his mind. One thing at a time. Horcruxes first. Then the world. Then the world, Harry agreed. The remaining weeks of term passed in a blur of preparation and normalcy interwoven. They attended classes, still effortlessly excellent, still drawing odd looks and whispered rumors, and spent their evenings planning. The castle helped, offering up historical records and architectural secrets, mapping ley lines and magical currents that might be useful in their summer campaign. Ron threw himself into the planning with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found his purpose. His chess mind was invaluable, mapping out logistics, anticipating complications, wargaming scenarios. When Harry mentioned the diary at Malfoy Manor, it was Ron who pointed out the simpler approach. "Dobby," Ron said one evening, the three of them bent over notes in their practice room. "Who?" Hermione looked up. "House elves. The Malfoys have one, Dobby. Dad's mentioned him. House elves can go anywhere in their master's home, take anything. They can also be freed, with clothes. You want to free the Malfoy house elf and have him bring us the diary?" Hermione's expression was complicated. She'd been reading about house elf bondage and had opinions, but her tactical mind saw the elegance. "Free him and get the diary," Ron said. "Two birds. No breaking into a fortified manor." Harry grinned. "That's brilliant." "Yeah, well." Ron's ears went red, pleased. "I have my moments." They put the plan in motion through Dumbledore, who had contacts within the Malfoy household willing to slip a sock into Lucius's papers. The freed Dobby appeared in the room of requirement 3 days later, a small, trembling creature with enormous green eyes and ears like satellite dishes, clutching a battered black diary in one hand and weeping with gratitude. "Harry Potter, sir. The great Harry Potter has freed Dobby. Dobby is free." "Happy to help," Harry said, slightly overwhelmed by the elf's intensity. "Is that the diary?" Dobby thrust it forward. "The bad book. Master kept it locked away, said it was for a special purpose. Bad magic, sir." Dobby could feel it. Dark and cold. Harry took the diary. It pulsed in his hands, colder than the diadem, more malicious somehow. This one felt aware. Not just a passive container but something with volition. A piece of Riddle's 16-year-old self, preserved in pages and ink, waiting to be activated. "Careful," Hermione warned. She was at his side, their bond already shifting into its defensive configuration. "This one's different. More complete. More conscious. I feel it." Harry held the diary at arm's length. The thing was trying to reach him, sending tendrils of influence outward, trying to establish connection, trying to find a mind to pour itself into. It found the bond instead. The tendrils recoiled. "Same as before?" he asked aloud. "Same as before," Hermione confirmed. They destroyed it. Together, the golden light of the bond burning through the diary page by page, the Horcrux within screaming, louder this time, more articulate, a voice that might have been a 16-year-old Tom Riddle howling "No, you can't." They could. They did. The diary went still. Its pages, once cream-colored, turned ash-gray. Dead. The magic gone. Just paper now. 4 down. 2 to go. Dobby watched the destruction with enormous eyes, then burst into fresh tears of joy and pledged his eternal service to Harry Potter, which Harry accepted with the mild bewilderment of someone who hadn't expected to acquire a fanatically loyal house elf before lunch. Exams came and went. Harry and Hermione achieved top marks in everything, surprising no one, though the degree of their superiority raised eyebrows. Harry scored 112% on the Charms Practical. Flitwick awarded extra credit for creative excellence, after Harry's shield charm physically manifested as a golden dome that resisted everything thrown at it. Hermione's Transfiguration exam answer was so advanced that McGonagall reportedly sat staring at it for 10 minutes before marking it. End-of-year feast. Gryffindor won the House Cup by a margin so vast it was almost embarrassing. Dumbledore awarded additional points for outstanding service to the school, looking directly at Harry, Hermione, and Ron as he said it, which pushed their lead from substantial to astronomical. The Slytherin table looked mutinous. Draco Malfoy, specifically, looked like he'd bitten something sour, though Harry noticed the blonde boy's glare was more thoughtful than hostile these days. Less I'll get you and more how do I deal with you. Growth, perhaps. Or calculation. Time would tell. The train ride home was warm and loud with end-of-term energy. Ron talked about his summer plans, family trip to Egypt if they could afford it, his brother Bill working as a cursebreaker for Gringotts. Neville talked about his greenhouse expansion. Dean and Seamus argued about football. Normal. Easy. The kind of childhood Harry had never expected to have. He leaned against the window, watching the Scottish countryside blur past, and let himself feel it, happiness. Simple, uncomplicated happiness. The year was over. They'd destroyed a Dark Lord's spirit and 4 of his Horcruxes. They'd made friends. They'd found a home. And the future stretched before them, challenging, certainly, but not frightening. Not when they faced it together. "Penny for your thoughts?" Hermione asked from across the compartment. She was ostensibly reading, but her awareness was turned toward him, warm and curious. "Just, grateful. For all of it. For you." Stop. But she was pleased, he felt it glow through the bond. "We've still got work to do this summer." "I know. The ring and the locket. Dumbledore wants to take us to the cave in August. The ring, he thinks he's located the Gaunt house. He wants to go in July. Then July it is." Harry watched the landscape change, highlands giving way to lowlands, wilderness to farmland. "Hermione. HM. Thank you. For 3 years ago. For hearing me." A pause. Through the bond, emotion so deep it didn't have a name, love, gratitude, belonging, home. All of it and more. "Always," she sent. "I'll always hear you." Summer arrived hot and golden. Harry spent it split between the Granger's house, where he had his own room now, where Emma cooked for him and Dan taught him to drive the lawnmower and Hermione dragged him to bookshops, and his own preparations for what lay ahead. The ring came first. They went to Little Hangleton on a Tuesday in mid-July, Harry, Hermione, and Dumbledore, operating to the outskirts of the village and walking the rest of the way. The Gaunt house was a ruin, half-collapsed, strangled by weeds, its magic dim and sour. Dark enchantments clung to it like cobwebs, ancient and neglected. Dumbledore stopped at the edge of the property. "The ring is inside. The protections, I've studied them from a distance. There is a compulsion on the ring itself, an almost irresistible urge to put it on." "We won't be putting it on," Harry said. "No. But I want you to understand the nature of the trap. The compulsion is tied to the stone in the ring, it calls to those who have lost loved ones. Promises reunion with the dead." Hermione's hand found Harry's. Through the bond, she showed him what she'd read about the resurrection stone, Deathly Hallow, one of 3, supposedly capable of calling shades of the departed back from death. "It's real?" Harry asked. "The stone is real. Whether it does what the legend claims, that's less certain." Hermione's thought was careful, analytical. "Either way, the compulsion won't work on us. The bond protects against external influence, we've proven that." "We'll be fine, Professor," Harry said aloud. They entered the ruined house. The ring was in the floorboards, hidden beneath rotting wood, protected by curses that Harry and Hermione dismantled like pulling threads from a tapestry. Each curse dissolved at the bond's touch, dark magic unraveling before the golden light of their combined will. The ring itself, a heavy gold band set with a cracked black stone, pulsed with the same soul sickness as the others. But beneath the Horcrux's taint, something else hummed. Something older. Something that felt, to Harry's senses, like the invisibility cloak he kept folded in his trunk. "The resurrection stone," Hermione confirmed. "It is real. And Harry, it's resonating with your cloak. They're connected." Later, he thought. Horcrux first. They destroyed it. The same process, golden light, the bond's surgical precision, the fragment screaming as it was unmade. But this time, the stone beneath survived. The Horcrux burned away, but the hallow remained, cracked, ancient, pulsing with its own deep magic. Harry picked up the cleaned ring. The stone was warm in his palm. He felt something. Not the compulsion Dumbledore had warned about, but a gentle tug. A suggestion. An offering. "Do you want to?" Hermione asked. She wasn't pushing either way. Just present. Just offering her support for whatever he chose. Harry turned the stone over 3 times. They appeared like mist coalescing, 2 figures, translucent, shimmering, standing in the ruins of the gaunt house as if they'd been waiting for exactly this moment. A man with Harry's wild black hair and hazel eyes. A woman with Harry's face shape and vivid green eyes. James and Lily Potter. Harry's breath stopped. "Oh," Lily said, and her voice was distant, an echo, a memory given temporary form, but the love in it was real. Undiluted. Overwhelming. "Oh, Harry. Look at you." "Mum," Harry whispered. "Son." James's shade grinned, rakish, proud, brimming with a joy that death hadn't dimmed. "Merlin, you've grown. And you've got," his translucent eyes moved to Hermione, then to the bond that shimmered golden between them. "Lils. Are you seeing this?" "I see it." Lily's shade moved closer, couldn't touch, couldn't truly be there, but the presence of her was warmth and safety and a love that transcended death. A soul bond. "My son has a soul bond." She was crying, could shades cry, and laughing at the same time. "Harry, I'm so proud of you. So proud." "We both are," James added. "What you've done, what you're doing, we can see, sometimes." Echoes. Impressions. "You're everything we hoped you'd be and more." Harry couldn't speak. The bond was flooded with his emotion, raw, enormous, the grief of a boy who'd grown up without parents meeting the joy of a man meeting them for the first time. Hermione held him steady through it. Not intruding. Just there. "Is it, are you really?" Harry managed. "We're echoes," Lily said gently. "Impressions left in the stone. Not truly us, not fully. But what we feel is real. The love is real." "I know." Harry's voice was thick. "I know it is. I felt it, when I was little. Even in the cupboard. Something kept me going." "That was you?" "The protection," Lily confirmed. "My sacrifice. Love made magic. It kept you alive and it kept you," she hesitated. "Harry, I'm sorry. About the Dursleys. I never meant, it doesn't matter now." And he meant it. The old wound was still there, would always be there, but it was healed. Scarred over. He had family now. Real family, chosen family, and the knowledge that his parents had loved him, had died for him, was the final piece of a puzzle he hadn't known was incomplete. James's shade looked at Hermione directly. "You. The other half. Thank you. For finding him. For loving him." Hermione's eyes were wet. "He found me too. It goes both ways." "I know it does." James's grin was blinding. "Take care of each other. Keep doing impossible things. And, Harry, yeah, Dad. Give them hell." Harry laughed. Wet, broken, joyful. "I will." The shades faded, slowly, gently, like morning mist burning off in sunlight. Lily's last impression was warmth. James's was pride. And then they were gone, and Harry stood in the ruins of the gaunt house holding a cracked black stone and feeling whole. Finally, completely whole. Hermione's arms were around him before the last shimmer faded. He held her back, tight, fierce, grateful beyond words. and let himself grieve and celebrate simultaneously. Because his parents were dead and he would always miss them, and that was okay. Because he was loved, had always been loved, and the proof of it was the girl in his arms and the bond between them and the life they'd built from nothing. Behind them, Dumbledore stood with tears streaming silently into his silver beard, his hands clasped before him, his face full of something that might have been redemption. 5 down. 1 to go. The cave was in August. A cliff face on the coast of England, battered by grey waves, salt spray and seabird cries. Dumbledore led them to a crevice in the rock, invisible to muggles, barely visible to wizards, and they descended into darkness. The cave was Voldemort's childhood place, where he'd brought 2 other orphans, where he'd first tasted power over others. Dark magic saturated the walls, the water, the very air. A black lake stretched before them, still as death, and in its center, an island. A green glow. "The locket is there," Dumbledore said. "Protected by, I believe, a potion that must be consumed to access the artifact. The lake itself is filled with inferi, reanimated corpses." Harry and Hermione looked at each other. Inferi, she thought. Reanimated dead. Vulnerable to fire. The potion, we're not drinking some cursed poison. Obviously not. Her mind was already working. The basin on the island, if it's a physical container, we don't need to drink the potion. We just need to get to the locket. "Professor," Harry said, "we're going to do this differently than Voldemort intended." They crossed the lake without the boat. Harry and Hermione simply walked, the bond's power suspending them above the water's surface, their combined will pressing down on the lake like a hand on a drum skin. The inferi stirred beneath them, pale shapes in the deep, disturbed by the magic above, but didn't breach the surface. The island was small, dominated by the basin Dumbledore had described. Green light pulsed from within, a glowing potion, thick and viscous, and somewhere beneath its surface, the locket. Harry studied the basin. The potion. The enchantments binding them together. He designed this to be torturous, Harry said. You drink the potion, it causes agony, dehydration, psychological torment, and only then can you reach the locket. It's not a protection. It's revenge. Punishment for anyone who dares touch his things. Sounds like him, Hermione murmured. Harry pointed his wand at the basin. The enchantments were complex, layered, vicious, designed to resist vanishing, siphoning, or any conventional magical bypass. The potion could only be removed by drinking. Conventional magical bypass, Harry repeated aloud. He looked at Hermione. She was already smiling. They weren't conventional. The bond opened between them, wide, blazing, golden, and they reached for the basin not with standard magic but with the raw, fundamental force of their combined will. The enchantments on the potion were designed to resist spells. They weren't designed to resist this, the power of a deep soul bond backed by 3 years of practice and the ambient magic of 2 of Voldemort's own destroyed Horcruxes still resonating in their cores. Harry pushed. Hermione pulled. Together, they simply unmade the enchantment. The potion vanished. Not transferred, not consumed, not neutralized. Unmade. Its magical structure dissolved the way the Horcruxes had, unraveled by a force it had no defense against because it had never been imagined. The locket lay in the empty basin. Heavy gold, set with a serpentine S in green stones. It hissed when Harry reached for it, actually hissed, a sound like parseltongue, like a snake warning off a predator. Harry picked it up anyway. The Horcrux inside raged. Of all the fragments, this one was the most vicious, pouring fear and hatred through the metal, trying to corrupt, trying to break, trying to survive. It showed them things, visions, nightmares. Harry alone, abandoned. Hermione choosing someone else, leaving him. The cupboard forever, darkness forever, alone forever, the bond laughed. Not Harry. Not Hermione. The bond itself, the connection between them, seemed to find the Horcrux's attempts at psychological manipulation absolutely, fundamentally hilarious. Because how could you convince someone they were alone when the literal proof of their connection burned golden between them? How could you make someone fear abandonment when they could feel their person, present and permanent and unbreakable? The locket's visions shattered like cheap glass. The Horcrux screamed one final time, and died. The golden light faded. The locket went still, just metal now, heavy and ornate and empty of everything except the craftsmanship of its maker. 6. All 6. Harry stood on the island in the center of the dark lake, holding the last of Lord Voldemort's anchors to immortality, and felt nothing. No dark magic. No soul fragments. No connection to the man who had murdered his parents and spent a decade haunting the wizarding world. Every piece of Tom Riddle that had been lodged in the world was gone. Unmade. Returned to nothing. Voldemort was dead. Truly dead. Completely dead. Every fragment of his shattered soul destroyed, the spirit in Quirrell, the scar, the diadem, the diary, the ring, the locket. All of them gone. "It's done," Harry said. His voice echoed across the still water. "It's finished." Behind them on the shore, Dumbledore sank to his knees. They returned to Hogwarts for the start of second year knowing something nobody else did: the war was over. Had been over since August, when the last Horcrux fell. The wizarding world didn't know yet. Would need to be told, eventually, in a way that didn't cause panic or denial or a political crisis. Dumbledore was handling that. The old wizard had thrown himself into the political work with the energy of a man reborn, freed from the weight of an impossible prophecy. He could focus on what he was actually good at: maneuvering, persuading, rebuilding institutions. He'd already begun the process of getting Sirius Black a trial. Was working with the goblins on accessing the Lestrange vault to confirm the cup's destruction. Was laying groundwork for reforms that would take years but were finally possible. Harry and Hermione let him work. They had their own agenda for second year, one that had nothing to do with Dark Lords or prophecies. "I want to learn everything," Hermione declared on the train back to Hogwarts, second year stretching before them like a blank page. Not just the Hogwarts curriculum, everything. Runes. Arithmancy. Alchemy. Magical theory. "The bond gave us power, Harry, but power without understanding is just force. I want to understand what we are at a fundamental level. And I want to teach," Harry said. Ron looked up from his chocolate frog. "Teach what?" "Defense. Real defense. Not the rubbish curriculum Hogwarts has been running. There are students in this school who can't cast a proper shield charm because no one's bothered to teach them. When the world finds out Voldemort's gone, there'll be fallout, Death Eaters panicking, political upheaval. People should know how to protect themselves. You want to start a defense club?" Ron grinned. "Mate, that's brilliant. Can I help?" "Obviously. I want to work on house elf rights," Hermione added, because she contained multitudes and the destruction of Dark Lords had not diminished her passion for justice. "And educational reform. The history of magic curriculum is an actual crime against learning, and I want to find out about Sirius Black," Harry said. "If he's innocent, if he's my godfather, then we get him out," Hermione finished. "Dumbledore's working on it." The train rocked gently, carrying them toward Hogwarts. Outside, the countryside rolled past in shades of gold and green, late summer giving way to early autumn. Inside the compartment, 3 12-year-olds planned a future with the casual ambition of people who'd already accomplished the impossible and saw no reason to stop. Neville poked his head in around lunchtime. "Room for one more?" "Always," Harry said. Neville squeezed in beside Ron, Trevor the Toad clutched safely in one hand. "Gran told me about," she didn't say much, but she said things were changing. "In the Wizengamot. Something about Voldemort being confirmed gone." "It'll be announced soon," Harry said. "Dumbledore's handling the timing." Neville stared at him. Was it you? Us, Harry corrected, nodding at Hermione. And Dumbledore. And Ron. And the castle itself, honestly. A lot of people contributed. Not me, Neville said quietly. You will, Hermione said with a certainty that made Neville straighten in his seat. There's going to be a lot of work to do. Rebuilding. Reforming. We'll need everyone. I'm not powerful like you. Power isn't just magic, Neville. Harry met the shy boy's eyes. It's showing up. It's choosing to be brave when it would be easier not to be. You've got that in spades. Neville flushed. But he nodded. And when the train pulled into Hogsmeade Station, he walked beside them with his shoulders back and his chin up, a boy growing into the space being made for him by people who saw his value before he did. Second year at Hogwarts was different. Lighter. The shadow that had hung over the castle, a shadow Harry now understood had been Voldemort's lingering influence, his Horcrux and the diadem poisoning the ambient magic for decades, was gone. The castle itself seemed brighter. Warmer. Students laughed more easily. Even the ghosts seemed cheerful. Harry's defense club started in October, in the Room of Requirement, which the castle configured into a perfect training space with an enthusiasm that bordered on eagerness. Word spread quickly, first among the Gryffindors, then the Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws, and eventually even a handful of Slytherins. By November, Harry was teaching 40 students proper shield charms, stunning spells, and situational awareness. He was a good teacher. Patient, clear, able to demonstrate at any level and adjust his instruction to match his student. Hermione handled the theory, explaining the why behind the how, and Ron managed the logistics with a quartermaster's efficiency. You should be teaching the actual class, Flitwick told Harry one afternoon, having observed a session with barely contained delight. You're better than half the defense professors this school has employed. Maybe someday, Harry said. Right now I'm happy just doing this. Hermione's research into their bond deepened. She worked with the castle, with Dumbledore's library access, with ancient texts the Room of Requirement provided. The picture that emerged was astonishing. Soul bonds weren't just rare. They were fundamental, woven into the magical world's deepest structure. The ley lines that powered magical sites. The enchantments that sustained wizarding institutions. The very fabric of magic itself. All of it resonated at the same frequency as the bond. We're not just connected to each other, Hermione told Harry one evening in their practice room, surrounded by books and charts and floating diagrams. We're connected to magic itself. The bond isn't just between us, it's a conduit. A channel into the source of magical power. That's why we're so strong. We're not drawing from our own reserves, we're drawing from the wellspring. The wellspring, Harry repeated, testing the word. Like, the origin of all magic. Something like that. The books call it different things, the source, the weave, the fundament. But yes. The raw, unfiltered power that all wizards draw from in diluted form through their cores. We access it directly. Is there a limit? Hermione was quiet for a moment. I don't think so. Not one I can find, theoretically. Our limit is knowledge and imagination, what we can conceive of, we can do. The power itself is, she shook her head. Harry, I don't think it has an upper bound. They sat with that for a while. The weight of it. The responsibility. Unlimited power was a nice fantasy, less nice as reality, because reality demanded you decide what to do with it. Then we have to be careful, Harry said finally. Not with using it, but with choosing when to use it. We could solve every problem by force. That doesn't mean we should. Agreed. Hermione leaned against him, shoulder to shoulder. We fight when we need to fight. We protect when we need to protect. But we don't become tyrants. I was going to say Dumbledores. She smiled wryly. Well-intentioned despots who decide what's best for everyone without asking. No. We're partners. With each other and with the people around us. Harry put an arm around her shoulders. We ask. We include. We share. That's how we stay human. That's how we stay us, she thought through the bond, and the warmth of it was answer enough. Christmas of second year was spent at the Grangers. All of it, Harry included, officially, with a bedroom that was his, with presents under the tree from Mum and Dad, as they'd insisted he call them, and as he'd finally, one October evening, managed to say without his voice breaking. Sirius Black was freed 3 days before Christmas. Dumbledore's political maneuvering, combined with evidence that Peter Pettigrew was alive, Ron's rat, of all things, revealed by the castle's map to be an unregistered animagus, resulted in a full Wizengamot trial, an acquittal, and a gaunt, wild-eyed man stumbling out of Azkaban prison into pale winter sunlight. Harry met him on Boxing Day. Sirius came to the Granger's house, thin, haunted, but with a manic energy that burned behind his grey eyes, and stood in the front hallway staring at his godson for a full 30 seconds before speaking. "You look like James," he rasped. "Except the eyes. Lily's eyes." "So I'm told," Harry said. And then, because life was too short and he'd spent too many years without family to waste time on awkwardness, "Would you like some tea? Emma makes really good shortbread." Sirius barked a laugh, loud, sudden, slightly unhinged. "Merlin. Yeah. Yeah, I'd like some tea." He stayed for 3 hours. Talked about James and Lily, stories Harry had never heard, stories that made his parents real in a way that photographs couldn't. Got to know Hermione. Prongs would have adored you, he always said James needed someone smarter than him to keep him in line. Met the Grangers and seemed genuinely baffled by their normalcy and warmth. "I have a house," Sirius said as he was leaving. "In London. It's awful, honestly. But it's mine. And I want you to know, it's yours too. Whenever you want. If you want." "Thank you," Harry said. "Come for New Year's?" Sirius's face, so guarded, so carefully composed, cracked open into something raw and young and hopeful. Yeah. He came for New Year's. And the new year after that. And eventually, Grimmauld Place got cleaned up and became another home in Harry's growing constellation of homes, places where he was wanted, people who wanted him, a family built from choice rather than blood. The announcement of Voldemort's permanent destruction came in February of their second year, handled by the Ministry, who took far more credit than they deserved, and Dumbledore, who took far less. The wizarding world erupted. Celebration in the streets. Dancing in Diagon Alley. The Daily Prophet running 40-page specials. Some people wept. Some people refused to believe it. Most just celebrated. Harry's name was everywhere. The boy who lived became the boy who conquered, a title he found equally ridiculous but marginally less annoying. People tried to interview him. Tried to give him awards. Tried to put him on chocolate frog cards. He declined everything. Attended no ceremonies. Gave no interviews. Let the Ministry have their victory parade and their self-congratulatory speeches. What mattered wasn't credit, it was results. What mattered was that children would grow up without fear. That parents would stop checking the sky for dark marks. That the word Voldemort would fade from a source of terror to a historical footnote. What mattered was that it was done. 3rd year. 4th year. 5th. They grew, not just in power, which continued to deepen in ways that defied measurement, but in wisdom. In understanding. In the quiet confidence of people who knew their own strength and chose, every day, how to use it. Harry taught defense against the dark arts in an official capacity starting in their 5th year, the youngest professor in Hogwarts history, splitting his time between teaching and his own continued education. Hermione pursued a mastery in magical theory, writing papers that made seasoned academics weep with a combination of envy and awe. Ron went into strategic consulting, first for the ministry's Aura department, then independently, his chess mind finding 100 applications in a world that was rebuilding from decades of war. They changed things. Not through force, though they had it, always had it, the wellspring of power flowing through their bond, a constant reminder that they could simply impose their will, but through presence. Through example. Through being undeniably, unarguably good at what they did, and using that excellence in service of making things better. House Elf writes. Educational reform. Integration between Muggle and magical worlds. Dismantling of blood purity politics. Each project was years of work, each one opposed by entrenched interests, each one advanced by the simple, stubborn refusal of two bonded people and their growing circle of allies to accept that this is how it's always been was a valid reason for how things should remain. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. They argued, with each other, with their friends, with the world. The bond didn't erase disagreement or eliminate difficulty, it just ensured they never faced any of it alone. And the world changed. Slowly, imperfectly, frustratingly incrementally, but it changed. Because two 8-year-olds had reached through the dark for each other and found something ancient and extraordinary and good, and they'd spent every day since then building a life worthy of that gift. Years later, many years, enough that the specifics of Hogwarts had faded into fond memory and the war was something taught in history classes, Harry stood on the platform at King's Cross, watching a dark-haired girl with Hermione's eyes and his unruly curls wrestle her trunk onto the Hogwarts Express. "I'll be fine, Dad," she said with the particular exasperation of an 11-year-old whose parents were hovering. "I know you will." Harry crouched to her level, hands on her shoulders. Through the bond, still there, still bright, still singing between him and Hermione after all these years, he felt his wife's pride and joy and faint, manageable anxiety. "The castle will take care of you," Harry told his daughter. "It knows who you are." Because of the bond. She knew about it, they'd never hidden it, never treated it as secret or shameful. It was simply part of their family's story. "Because you're ours," Hermione said, appearing beside Harry and wrapping an arm around his waist. "And the castle has good taste." Their daughter rolled her eyes with the theatrical intensity only preteens could manage, hugged them both quickly, and bounded onto the train. Through the window, they could see her finding a compartment, stowing her trunk, settling in. The whistle blew. The train began to move. Parents waved. Children pressed their faces to windows. Harry took Hermione's hand. The bond hummed between them, steady, warm, eternal. The same connection that had found them in the dark 20-odd years ago, that had rebuilt them both, that had destroyed a Dark Lord and changed a world. Still there. Still growing. Ready for an empty house? She asked. "It's not empty." He squeezed her hand. "You're in it." She laughed, the same laugh he'd first heard in a Surrey library when she was 8 years old, bright and surprised and genuine. He'd loved that laugh then, without knowing it. He loved it now, knowing it fully. The train rounded a bend and disappeared. The platform emptied. And Harry and Hermione stood together in the thinning crowd, hand in hand, bond singing, watching the future carry their daughter toward the same castle that had recognized them so many years ago. Not because they were powerful, though they were. Not because they were special, though the world had insisted on calling them that. But because they had found each other. Because in a moment of desperation and loneliness, a boy in a cupboard had reached out and a girl in her bedroom had reached back, and something ancient and good had answered them both. That was the story. Not power. Not prophecy. Not destiny. Just two people who refused to be alone. Who reached through the dark. Who held on. Everything else, the magic, the battles, the world they'd changed, was just what happened after.